co-chair to come sit down.
Where we started?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be here tomorrow.
You'll be here tomorrow? We had someone step out of the room for a second, so we'll wait until they're back in here. There we go. Okay, Mary Beth, you can go ahead and call roll.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Present.
Senator James.
Here.
Senator Moniz.
Here.
Senator Wasserberger.
Here.
Representative Edwards.
He's present.
Representative Flitner.
Are you not on?
Representative Freeman.
Here.
Representative Haley.
Here.
Representative Newsom.
Newsom's here.
Representative Tass.
Here.
Representative Winter.
Here.
Representative Yunin.
Here.
Co-Chairman Driscoll.
Here.
Co-Chairman Miller.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, welcome everyone. And I see everyone is social distancing. So that's good. Everyone take their temperature this morning? No? Okay, first item up is the Wyoming Gaming Commission. You're on.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. My name is Charlie Moore. I'm the director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for having me here today. 2019 was a banner year. Racing.
Mr. Chairman.
We're unmuting here and we'll start over.
Yeah, you gotta sit in the chair.
Sit in that other chair.
Yeah.
Oh, it's that camera, isn't it?
Okay.
Who's muted phone?
Representative Edwards, are we good to go? Okay, Mr. Moore, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. My name is Charlie Moore. I'm the director of the Wyoming Gaming Commission. It's a pleasure to be here today. And again, thank you very much for inviting me. 2019 was a banner year. Racing was in an upswing. Revenues generated by the industry were setting all records. You all have a copy of our annual report. And if you have any questions on that, I'll be more than happy to go through that with you. If you don't mind, Chairman Miller, I would like to just fast forward now to 2020 to today.
There we go.
Go ahead, continue. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. If you don't mind, I would like to fast forward to today, where we are today in the horse racing industry. And also standing up the new gaming commission. While the task has been difficult, the mountain has not been unsurmountable. Since passage of House Enrolled Act 95, we have had 7 meetings and we are making headway. We have addressed House Enrolled Act 95 in a phased approach. Our first phase was the 60-day window that we were given to approve skill-based amusement games. We authorized 10 operators, 836 games, 306 establishments, and 3 game manufacturers. During that time, the 3 game manufacturers were Pace-O-Matic, Bankshot, and Gracie. We then moved in after the end of the 60-day period. We moved into our phase 2 approach to it, which was the rules, the reorganization of the agency and staffing, and then now starting July 1, we have been licensing bingo and pull tabs across the state. Since July 1st, we've licensed over 30 locations and more are in the hopper today. We will continue to place notices in the local newspapers of the new requirements and continue to license bingo and pull tab operators. The other part of our phase 2 approach was enforcement. With House Enrolled Act 95, you gave us the authority to enforce 67101 through 67104, which is our gaming statutes. And we're working on that and standing that up. We're working with local law enforcement, and we're working with obviously the Attorney General's office on how that will be envisioned. And then finally, in the phase 2, and we've been working really since the governor signed the bill in March on the gaming report. The gaming report we will deliver to you September 1st, if not before that point in time. I believe this is the committee that it is asked to receive that report, and we'll get that to you in a timely fashion as the law requires. Then we move into the phase 3, which phase 3 basically is continuing to review our processes and procedures, implementing incremental changes as required and forecasted. In addition, we want to communicate issues that we're seeing and concerns to this committee and to our other legislators. We have developed, we have an ongoing list that we're putting together of suggestions for you that will go in that report as well. As we walk this project forward, we ask everyone to be patient. We are attempting to regulate and license an industry that received little oversight for many years. In regards to bingo and pull tabs, we've had questions, when did the law change? The law has not changed. However, the oversight has. Years of inconsistencies with bingo and pull tabs and complacency in the regulatory oversight has created the confusion that we're dealing with now. And we're attempting to clarify those and do it respectfully with all participants. The agency will continue to be dedicated in providing fair and unbiased determinations, and will do the best job possible in fulfilling its legislative mandate. We appreciate and respect all of the participants and will continue to do so. As a responsible state agency, we're also very concerned with our budgets and the costs and expenses that we're incurring. Yes, we are self-funded. However, we will always address spending in a respectful and conservative manner, reviewing all programs for cost savings. However, the agency is in an interesting position, needing to increase staffing to cover the duties assigned with House Enrolled Act 95. It has been a tough push. It's been very challenging for the agency, for my staff, but I am pleased with the progress we're making. If possible, I would like to show you an interactive map. I believe Nick Laramendi is available to assist me with that map. LSO, did you want to? Okay, here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Nick, for putting the map up. First off, obviously, this is the state of Wyoming map that you're looking at. And can everybody see it okay? Thank you. What I'm trying to show to you is the coverage across the state. Now, Nick is going to plug in, he's first clicked on the racetracks that we have in the state. And as you can see, currently, we have up in the northeastern side of the state, we have Campbell County. Then we have Sweetwater County with the racetrack, and then we have Evanston with our one solely owned racetrack. Now, Nick, if you would click on the off-track wagering locations for me. Now, you're looking there at the off-track wagering locations throughout the state. And again, the coverage is in the primary cities throughout our state. The next one, Nick, if you'd plug in the broodmares, the Wyoming Bred Program. Now, what you're looking at there is what we're overseeing with the Wyoming Breeders' Award Program, the Wyoming Bred Program. And those are all of the farms and locations where we have Wyoming bred horses raising and participating in the Wyoming Bred Program. In the Wyoming Bred Program last year, we paid out in 2019 over $3.1 million to the Wyoming Bred Program. It's increasing. It's been a wonderful project. It's worked well for the state, and it's been a very big agriculture blossoming in our state with the horse racing industry. Now, The next one I'm going to have Nick touch on would be the Gracie Games. And this is now post House Enrolled Act 95. Now in green, you see the locations in the state where we have the Gracie Games. And now again, this is, like I said, post House Enrolled Act 95. Now let's click on the Bank Shot Games, Nick, if you would please. And again, as you can see, we're starting to fill out the state with a lot of terminals, a lot of activity, and also a lot of driving and traveling for our staff to get to those locations. And then finally, the Pace-O-Matic Games, Nick, to fill in the state. Now, as you can see, that's a lot of activity. And it does create an interesting dilemma for my staff. Nick, let's, if you don't mind, let's take Cheyenne just for instance, and let's scroll in a little tighter and everybody can kind of take a look at what it looks like down there with the games. Can you do that? There you go. There's a little bit of lag here maybe, but as you can see, there's quite a bit of games in each one of these communities. So let's scroll back, Nick. And thank you very much. If you have any questions on this mapping, on what we've done here, everyone, please feel free to ask. Again, I apologize. We've got a little bit of a lag here. It should be refreshing itself fairly quickly. There you go. It's starting to, so. But why do I show you that? I show you that for obvious reasons, to show that we have a large expanse across the state. We have 95,000 square miles we're covering, and we're doing it with 7 individuals. I have repurposed, since House Enrolled Act, 2 of our positions, and we had 2 inspector positions. We repurposed those into law enforcement positions. Those 2 gentlemen are out and about all across the state, licensing, stickering over the 60-day window we had, and attempting to get everything approved and squared up so the operators could continue to work. Thank you, Nick. If there's no questions on this map, I'm going to ask, Nick has to head off to, and our other investigator have to go to Evanston. We have racing in Evanston this weekend. And so if there's no more questions, I'll let him get off the line. Thank you, Nick. Moving on to the live racing. The commission originally permitted 30 days of live racing in Gillette, Evanston, and Rock Springs. With COVID-19, we now have a 6-day reduction in days, and we have 24 days of racing commencing July 4th through September 20th. 14 days in Evanston and 10 days in Rock Springs. If you look at your handouts and that were provided for you here today and also provided through LSO, the first one I'd like to go over briefly would be the historic racing wagering trends. Everybody can see this is one here. At the top, you have your bar graph, and basically what that's showing you is from January 19th to January of 19 through June of 20, and you can see the wagering activity. And the red line is Wyoming Horse Racing LLC. The blue line is Wyoming Downs LLC, and this represents their wagering activity. And of course, obviously, you can see March 20th, we had a drop off, and then you can see where we're recovering at now. We're looking at about a 70 to 75% potentially recovery for each one of the operators. They are doing that with about a 40 to 50% reduction in terminals, attempting to have social distancing in the off-track wagering locations as well. The permittees, the 2 operators, Wyoming Downs and Wyoming Horse Racing, offering masks and exhibiting all the social distancing protocols as best they can in their local area and working with their local health departments on that. Wyoming Horse Racing with the live racing this year was forced to cancel their early event, and it was up in Gillette, and Wyoming Downs is running right now. It's been a tough road to hoe doing it with social distancing and also face masks and things, but they're doing it. The horsemen have been incredibly helpful in the whole situation. They're just happy to be there. They're adhering to, the protocols that the local county health department have put out and the variances that have been approved, and they've done a great job. And it's also helped that Wyoming Downs has, for all practical purposes, educated the horsemen on what to expect when they come to the next race meet for Wyoming horse racing. So it's been a good exercise for everyone, but it has been a stretch. Again, with historic racing, if you don't mind, I'd move on also with that. 2016 to 2019, historic racing has returned to the cities and counties over $20 million, significant amount of money. They've also returned through the same period, 2016 to 2019, $8.1 million to the Breeders' Award Fund. And again, those are Wyoming people raising horses in Wyoming. The participants in the Wyoming Bred Program do live, some of them in other states, but they've got their horses here in Wyoming, paying the bills here and keeping those mares here. The first quarter of 2020, the city and county funding money was $2.8 million. Shortly after the March 20th closures of our off-track wagering locations, the commission decided we had the money. We typically return the city and county money to the local municipalities every 6 months. We went ahead and transferred that money quicker to assist the local municipalities. And we went ahead, and since we had a closure, there was no need to keep that. We went ahead and went through the process of flushing that money down to the local municipalities. The Wyoming Breeders' Award Fund for the first 2 quarters was $1.1 million this year. And the donation to the LISRA account is $710,000. With the closures, there was lost revenue and tax money to the state of Wyoming. We had a 50-day shutdown of the off-track wagering locations, and it translated into approximately $44,000 a day that was being lost to the Breeders' Award Fund, to the cities and counties, to the state of Wyoming, to the LISRA. And like I said earlier, we were approximately 70 to 75% recovery at this point. If there's no questions on the historic horse racing, I'd like to move on to the skill-based amusement games.
Committee, any questions? You see on the internet here if we got anyone with their hands up. Don't see any. Please continue.
Thank you very much. The chart that I'm going to kind of walk through with you is the other chart that I handed out, tax revenue for skill-based amusement games. First off, standing up the Gaming Commission and standing up the approvals for the skill-based amusement games wouldn't have been as successful as it has been without the assistance from the individuals that operate. They have come to the table. They've been very helpful in the process for us. So I do want to thank them. Again, a lot of hours, a lot of work going into it to put this together, and also a lot of cooperation. On your sheet here, you'll see the 10 operators that are approved in the state: Brewer Amusement, Entertaining Experts, Jenkins Music, Jewel Box, Paradise Pinball, Wind River, Wyoming Amusement Services, S&C Vending, and Sunrise Distributing. As you look at the bar graph, I understand the bar graph is it's interesting to say the least, I guess, with some of the jumps and ups and downs. But a lot of that is the We started collecting the tax money on 5/11, the week of 5/11 and May 17th. And we didn't have all the locations either approved, or they hadn't gotten all their terminals turned back on, or also they were still closed with COVID-19. And some of the places are even still closed. So, but currently to date, up to July 5th of this year, the total tax that has been paid on the skill-based amusement games is $478,000. The net proceeds for that period, and that's how that is calculated, is on net proceeds, is 2.3 million. And again, that's the 20% tax. If there's no questions on that.
I have a question. What date is this to? To yesterday or last Friday?
This sheet, the skill-based amusement game sheet, is as of the 5th of July.
5th of July.
Yes, sir.
So for 2 months, it's generated that amount of taxation, right?
Yes, sir.
That's significant.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr.
Any
Chairman,
questions? Yes, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so if this is over 2 months, what has it been fairly constant over those 2 months? Would we see, if we extrapolated this to the whole year, would it be about $6 million in tax revenue? Would you estimate?
Mr. Morgan, can you hear the question?
I believe, has it been constant? Has it?
Please, go ahead and answer.
Thank you. Chairman Miller, Representative Yin, thank you for the question. And I believe what I heard was, has it been consistent? You know, it's really, as I think you know, it's still a little early to make a lot of projections on this. I think we've got a potential of my estimation for 2020 would be $2.1 million in tax. And it is a little early. If we had more data, obviously we could project better. And as they fill out and open these locations, that's going to be a significant change as well. I hope I was able to answer your question.
I think you got it. We'll go to Senator Moniz now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlie, with these 10 operators, how many communities are they operating in?
Did you catch that? How many communities are they operating in?
Yes. Chairman Miller, Representative Moniz, again, a great question. We have 306 locations, I believe I said. Yes, 306 establishments. I believe we're in every county in the state. I'd have to go back through the map, but I'll get you those communities. Excuse me. I apologize for that. I should have thrown it out the door. That's one of my stewards at the racetrack trying to get a hold of me. So I do apologize. I can get back with you on the communities if that's all right with you, sir.
So follow up, Mr. Chairman, what does an average establishment generate monthly?
I'm not hearing.
What is the average established generate?
Nick are you still on the call with Steve Dobby, our senior accountant? I don't know if we lost
It
him.
shows Nick still on the call. I don't know if he's watching.
Steve should be, I think. Steve, are you able to answer that question, Steve?
I don't see Steve on the call.
He would be using.
Yes,
Nick's.
I'm here. I was unmuting Nick's screen. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Yes, Chairman Miller. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Could you guys repeat the question real quick? We're getting a lot of feedback on this end.
What does the average establishment generate in revenue per month?
Per month?
Right.
Well, if you take just June's numbers and divide that, we have 380 some establishments. Tax wise, this is just a ballpark figure, but I'm guessing each establishment produces around $1,800 to about $1,500 to $1,800 in tax revenue a month per establishment. Now we've only got 9 weeks worth of data, so it's hard to extrapolate exactly how much each establishment produces at this time. And like Charlie said, some of these establishments aren't even open yet. If you look at the Brewer Amusement, who is predominantly in the truck stop, most of their terminals are in truck stops. They've only recently started producing tax revenue in the last 3 to 4 weeks. And so to break that down by establishment, it's very specific, especially with the COVID outbreak. You know, some of these establishments aren't running at full speed yet. So it's really hard to extrapolate a per establishment revenue basis. And some of these establishments are not in towns, they're outside of towns, they're out in the counties. And so it really varies from establishment to establishment how much they produce. But I can get you a per average estimate if you'd like that at a later time. I can break that down for you.
Well, that's good enough. Thank you. I do have a follow-up question though, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
In those 380 establishments, you guys have already checked all the machines to make sure they are skill-based games?
Mr. Director, do you want to answer that, or you?
I would, I just didn't hear the question.
Have you inspected all the machines in the 380 establishments?
No, we have not been able to get to all those.
So we're assuming they're legal.
Okay, Steve, could you introduce yourself again, your full name and your position with the Gaming Commission?
Yes, my name is Stephen Dobby for the Wyoming Gaming Commission as the senior accountant.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Dobby, I would say?
Mr. Chairman, just to follow up, we're assuming that they are legal then, the ones they haven't checked.
Well, we'll check with the director and get his comments on that.
I didn't hear the question.
The question was, we assume they're legal.
Yes.
The response was yes. Okay, I believe I saw Senator Anselmi Dalton's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Charlie, I'm just curious. I assume that you guys are allowed in other establishments. For example, if Old Chicago and my hotel said, oh, suddenly they would like to have a few machines, is that going to be allowed? I'm just trying to curious where the rules are going.
Did you hear that?
I am not here. I'm not able to hear that because I'm listening to yours.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, you just mute yours.
Okay. Okay, Senator Anselmi Dalton, can you repeat your question?
Sure. Charlie? Can, if Old Chicago and Rock Springs wants to have some of these machines, are they allowed, or are we limiting to what was in existence already? I'm just curious.
Did you catch that?
I did not, sir.
There is a volume control on your computer. If you could turn it up.
Okay.
Sorry, Senator, we're working on,
Okay. I turned up the volume.
okay, Senator Anselmi Dalton, please repeat your question one more time.
Okay, I was going to put in the chat, but it's basically, the question is, can Old Chicago and Rock Springs, for example, if they wanted to add these machines, in my hotel, can they do that, or is it limited to existing machines?
Thank you, Chairman Miller, Senator Ansalmi Dalton. At this point in time, the legislature, House Enrolled Act 95, only authorized us to place the machines in current establishments that have machines. So to answer your question, at this point in time, the answer is no, they would not be able to until this either the new legislation comes forward and authorizes the continuing of this activity in 21. So the answer would be no at this time.
Okay, I don't see any further questions, so please continue.
Let's turn this one down now.
Mic's on.
Oh, yeah. Is my mic on? Oh, well, in closing, while this is a little confusing for everyone, in closing, I would like to remind everyone there's a need for being responsible with gambling and the social consequences that come with gaming and gambling in our state. The Commission feels it's important that all permitted individuals participate in problem gambling and initiatives towards that. Thank you very much for your time. I stand for questions.
Okay, any questions for, well, I gotta turn on the mic again. Any questions for Director Moore? Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For your committee meetings, when do you plan on start recording and archiving your committee meetings?
Thank you, Chairman Miller, Chairman Miller, Senator James. That's a very good question. We talked about it briefly earlier. I think we're going to start during the next meeting, to do that. Since we can do the video recording of the meetings, we can do that. So thank you for that suggestion this morning.
Follow up? Go ahead, Senator.
And do you guys at some point plan on developing a strategic plan?
Chairman Miller, Senator James, I'm always used to having your nameplates up here. That's the hard part here sometimes. We've developed a strategic plan. We've already had one in place. It's still in development though. And yes, to answer your question.
Okay, Senator James, follow up. You finished? No, go ahead.
I do have a question on your May 28th meeting regarding your Gracie technology. That application, can you mute your?
Trying to hear.
There we go. Okay. On your May 28th meeting, that application was approved, but it was approved even though the application was late being submitted. And I was just curious if you could explain why it was approved. And even though it clearly states within the House Enrolled Act 95 that there's a 60-day window.
Chairman Miller. Senator James, again, a good question, and thank you. And I really meant to lead with the response to that because I know that's a concern of everybody. That application was in our offices prior to the date, the 60-day window. However, we didn't get it approved until after the 60-day window. So the applicant did everything that was requested of them. They had their reports in, they had all their locations in, and they also had the games in play at that time as well. So And if you'd like, you know, I can sure follow up at a later date with all the dates that they came in as well.
Senator James, follow up?
I understand that they had all their stuff in, but according to House Enrolled Act 95, it says in there that shall be approved before the 60-day window, not have everything in by the 60-day window. And so, I mean, that's the concern. And so every other operator had their stuff in. And so I'm wondering why the exception was made for that particular operator.
And we discussed this, and then the commission made the determination that since all the paperwork had been in and they had done their job, the commission it takes time to go through these approvals. If we received an application on the last day, it takes time to get through. So that was a call that, under the advisement of council, the commission went ahead and did move forward and approve it.
Follow up, Senator James?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, since the Attorney General works for the government, not for the people, that would make sense that the Attorney General would rule that way. And this commission was put in place to avoid these particular type of situations. So this operator should know that since this does take a lengthy process to get their application in early and not on the last day. So this should be on the operator, and they shouldn't have had their application approved per House Enrolled Act 95. I mean, if we were to go by what this bill says. So I'm just, once again, wondering why the commission approved this. It shouldn't have happened by the House Enrolled Act 95. It just shouldn't have happened.
Go ahead.
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot hear Charlie's response. He's muted.
There. Is it on now? You got it? Good.
Mary Beth, can you kind of control the mic for the presenter?
Mr. Chairman, I'll see what I can do.
Anyway, I think it's on now.
I
So
think so.
you
Is
can
it
go
on?
ahead.
You hearing me all right? Okay, thank you very much. Chairman Miller, Senator James, you know, I do understand the frustration. The individual, the application and the applicant, they had done their job. They had provided the agency with all the information before that date. The commission, because of the timing and all the different things that go into the approval process, basically ratified a decision that had been made at the staff level after the date. So again,
I believe it froze this time.
all right, Where would you like me to pick up at? Start from the beginning again?
Start at the beginning.
Okay. Chairman Miller, Senator James, again, a great question. The applicant had all of their information into the commission by the date. It was the commission that was trying to review that application as quickly as possible. Part of our process, just so you have a clear understanding of the process, we review the laboratory reports that come in, and we also have a demonstration of the particular gameplay, so we feel comfortable that the game operates the way the lab report is. And so it takes time, and then also setting up meetings and different things. So, I mean, those are all really don't matter in my world, but the commission staff had already ratified it and had already made their determination. It was a matter of the formal approval by the commission. It was after the date. And, just in a maybe a larger view of this sometimes, while it was a concern and the commission talked about it, the commission discussed it, and it's also, it was our mistake. So that's bottom line, it was our mistake. And it was us that couldn't get to it in time.
Okay, Senator James, follow up? Okay, thank you. Can everyone on the internet, on the committee, give us a thumbs up if you're hearing okay? I'm looking for the ones that are out of town more than here in the room. Okay. Is anyone not hearing? Okay. Okay. I think we're hearing okay. Okay, Representative Freeman, did I see your hand up earlier?
No, sir. No, sir.
You need to turn your speaker on again. Just a
No, I
second,
didn't.
Representative Freeman.
No, I didn't have any
Okay,
comments.
is the speaker on? Okay, Representative Freeman, go ahead.
I wasn't trying to make any comments.
We can't hear you, Representative Freeman.
We can hear him. I think it's just you can't hear him in the room.
I have,
Okay. We have the mic on there. Okay. Go ahead, Representative Freeman.
I wish to make no comments. I don't know.
Oh. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Director, did you have any further comments?
I think I'm finished.
Okay. We'll take public testimony now. And I don't know who's online and who's in the room. Who in the room is going to want to make public comment? Who
Mr.
wants to go
Chairman,
first?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, Mary Beth, go ahead.
I have Jonathan Downing, Catherine Wilkinson, Mike Mosier, and Chris Brown. All Chris Brown and Mike Mosier are via Zoom, so I will admit them to the room.
Charlie, can you mute that computer? It's feedback to the microphone.
Okay, and Mary Beth, can you put on the chat line the people that are in that are wanting to join by Zoom?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll do that right now.
Okay, I see Chris Brown and Mike Mosier have popped up. Please raise your hand, whoever wants to go first. Okay, Mr. Mosier, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. Everybody hear me okay? Hope so. Anyway, thanks for this
Mr.
opportunity.
Mosier, we don't have a speaker here yet, so hold on till we get the mic, the speaker working. Okay, let's try it again, Mr. Mosier.
Okay, we'll see how this works. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. Thank you for this opportunity. As you all know, I'll just give a brief update. This is obviously the most difficult time for bars and clubs since Prohibition ended. Very difficult time. The skill games have actually acted as a rescue net for many of those businesses. We expect probably 10 to 15% to not survive this, unfortunately. And thanks to Director Moore and the Gaming Commission, they've done an outstanding job in a very short period of time. There are still a few things that need ironed out. For example, and this ties in with Senator Anselmi Dalton's question, there are about, I believe, 80 some machines that were not approved by the Gaming Commission, who unfortunately those businesses and clubs put those machines in good faith. They thought they were fine, and it wasn't their fault, but now they're shut down. And so the discussion is whether we can replace those machines with bona fide games, because the definitions weren't written until after they had the machines. So they're working on that now. The Gaming Commission is, I have full faith that they'll come up with a good decision on that. One of the things that we thought was kind of minor that turned out to be really major is the bingo and pull tab licensure. And I mean that in a good way. As in my discussions with Director Moore, and he's done a great job in doing this so far, there's a number of places, and we all knew this, a number of establishments that were running bingo and pull tabs that were outside statutory authority. I think the vast majority of them were unknowing that you can't be a for-profit and run bingo and pull tabs and donate to a nonprofit. You have to be a nonprofit. I think the benefit, long-term benefit to licensure of bingo and pull tabs will benefit the fraternal organizations, veterans organizations that are running bona fide operations within statutory authority, and I'm actually pretty excited about that. As we look ahead, I mentioned the COVID-19 pandemic and what a horrible impact it's had on our businesses. That sense of uncertainty is only heightened by the idea that next year, if we don't run legislation, our machines will be unplugged. As of, I believe, July 1, 2021, unless we run legislation to extend that, or better yet, eliminate the sunset, they're going to be out of business. And so there is a lot of concern about that, especially since the way it looks, by July 2021, we'll still be dealing with the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, new machines, and this ties directly in with Senator Anselmi Dalton's question. There were a number of bars, restaurants, and clubs that didn't have games of skill because they were concerned about the statutory authority, or they hadn't been approached by an operator to put them in, who would love to have them now who can't. And those businesses, like all of us, are struggling. And so allowing new machines to be put in and extending we're eliminating the sunset would be a number one priority for those businesses. That's about all I have, Mr. Chairman, and I would be happy to take any questions. Once again, I really appreciate the work of this committee. We thought skill games were kind of a minor sideline, and now any rescue attempt to keep our small businesses and clubs alive is a welcome thing, and these skill games have turned out to be such. So thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Okay, questions for Mr. Mosier? Okay, Representative Freeman.
Mr. Chairman, this isn't for Mike, but I think it's for the committee. If we do have a special session, maybe we should have legislation to do what Mike was saying, so that it's taken care of before we get to the new year. And I think that that would be a nice COVID response to allow small businesses to have another revenue stream. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is he still going? Okay, Representative Freeman, please bring that up after we're finished with public testimony if you want to make that motion for the committee to consider that bill. Okay, further questions or comments with Mr. Mosier? Committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to, Representative Yin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to check to see if I heard right. Did you, at the beginning of your testimony, say this was the hardest time since the end of Prohibition or the beginning of Prohibition? Thank you, Mr. Mosier.
Okay, Mr. Mosier, go ahead.
Well, we would have a hard time competing with Prohibition. I hope I said since the end of Prohibition, but if I did say beginning of Prohibition, I stand corrected. Thank you, Representative Yen.
Okay, further questions? Okay, seeing no hands up, Mr. Brown, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay? Great, thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris Brown representing Bank Shot Skill Games. We appreciate the work of the committee and of the Gaming Commission tremendously. Director Moore and his staff were very responsive with my clients throughout the licensing process. And we found it to be workable, got through it, and all of our games were licensed appropriately within the 60-day window as directed by statute. Mr. Chairman, I only wanted to weigh in today to basically echo what Mr. Mosier said, in the sense that from our perspective, the intent of this legislation was to establish the Gaming Commission, get Wyoming's arms around what is in the state, and differentiate between games that do fall within the allowable definition of skill-based amusement games in statute, away from games that do not. That has happened, and it is our hope, Mr. Chairman, that the committee will take up Representative Freeman's suggestion of bringing a bill sooner than later that addresses eliminating the moratorium and allowing legal skill-based games to continue to operate in Wyoming. Everybody on the committee knows that I also wear the restaurant and lodging hat as well. And while I don't represent them right now in this capacity, certainly these games do play an important role in generating additional revenue in some of those establishments. And any tool that will assist in generating additional revenue during these difficult times is welcomed. And we will be happy to participate in the process as it continues to move forward, with the hope that we will be able to continue these games, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, committee? No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, who's up next? Jonathan, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman.
It's saying it's unmuted right now.
Turn the mic on. That's what we need to do.
Oh, here we go.
Very good. Hey, you got it. It's on.
We're good?
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Downing and Catherine Wilkinson on behalf of Pace-O-Matic and Cowboy Skill. Just briefly, do agree with the comments of Representative Freeman, and I think that would be a good opportunity if the committee so decides to move forward. I'll turn it over to Catherine now for more of an update on where we are. I do want to say thank you to the Gaming Commission staff for how quickly they did move when this bill went into effect to when they ended up licensing Pace-O-Matic and the Cowboy Skill operators in Wyoming.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Catherine Wilkinson with Cowboy Skill. To give you an update, our Cowboy Skill games were licensed on April 24th. And as a refresher, Cowboy Skill is made up of a combination of competing vendors from across the state. There are 8 of them. And in addition to the skill games, they still are providing the traditional vending entertainment of the pool and the dart leagues, the coin op entertainment, and ATMs. We had of the 836 games licensed, 611 of those games are Cowboy Skill, and the 306 locations that were authorized, we have 232 locations. Our aim all along has been to help small businesses, and we've been very happy to be able to provide them some revenue during this very trying time. So far, Cowboy Skill has paid $433,880 to the state in taxes, and we have in reserve a $204,720 in the prepaid taxes. We do it a little differently because we run off of a fill system, so we would in essence be able to prepay taxes, but as a bill is written, we're paying week by week. We have not reached the tipping point yet that was required in House Enrolled Act 95 with the 1 million of the gaming account, and then it'll go out into the breakouts of the cities, towns, and counties, the school foundation, and then a percentage still goes to the Gaming Commission for maintenance, but we are looking forward to more of that money being able to go out into our communities and help. We are definitely looking forward to working with you all on future legislation, and we would stand for any questions.
Okay, questions for Mr. Downing or Mrs. Wilkinson? Okay, Senator James, is your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you feel that if they were to, put yours on mute. Do you feel that if they were to take the limit off the max bet and the max win, like they do with the pari-mutuel games, that your games would be able to provide more revenue to the state, as do the pari-mutuel racing games?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator James, yes, I mean, if there was not a cap on it, a lot of the max payout and the max bet, however, were very carefully determined to make sure that there's not a problem with gambling. Our skill games are meant as a consumer protection. They're meant as entertainment in bars. They're not meant as an end destination casino. So we wouldn't want that unlimited amount. We would ask for a cap on it to prevent problem gambling. They're again meant for entertainment and a supplement to a business, not supposed to be the end destination or the entire business model.
Follow up, Senator James? No. Okay, further questions? Further questions? I see none. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Further public testimony? Further public testimony? How about online? Do we have anyone, Mary Beth, that would like to testify?
Mr. Chairman, there is no one else signed up.
There's no one else.
Okay, Mary Beth commented that there was no one else. So that's it for this topic. Representative Freeman, would you like to make a motion?
Can I get some testimony from Charlie before I make a motion? I would like to know what he thinks of introducing a bill like I suggested before right now. They have been saying that they're pretty stressed at where they are. And I would like to know how this would affect the agency before I make my motion.
Mr. Moore, could you please come up to the podium? And please proceed.
Chairman Miller, Representative Freeman, thank you. You know, I think it would be an exercise that would, but we can handle that. Yes, we are pushing staff, but by the time this would go into effect, I think that we would be close to the end of our racing season. And also we're into our final phase, and which does include adding on some contracted employees to help us out. So I don't think this would be a problem to work out.
Okay, thank you. Rumor has it that we may have a special session towards the end of August. Could you help work something up with whoever's going to be pushing this bill in that time frame?
Chairman Miller, yes, I would be more than happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. Representative Freeman, why don't you go ahead then?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the agency and LSO and other interested parties craft legislation for our committee's approval to extend the Gaming Commission and its activities.
Okay, do I have a second? A second from Anselmi Dalton? Okay, we've had a motion, we've had a second. We'll have a discussion now. Would anyone like to make a comment or discuss this particular motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I just think that whenever you're in business that you want to have, you know what, you want to have a lay of the territory. You don't want things to come up that's surprising, and you want to kind of have a view of the horizon to where that you know that you can make certain decisions. So I think that if the legislature puts together a bill now, a good bill now, and addresses it in a special session, I think that it will help our small businesses around the state. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Freeman. Staff, Mr. Brody, do you have some comments on this motion and the possible workload for you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Brody, Legislative Service Office. I really just had a question, making sure that LSO understood the directive that was being given to it should this motion pass. Is the intent to eliminate the June 30th, 2021 date for the operation of skill games, or is it to extend that date for a period of time into the future set by this committee? And then the second question would be, is it simply that date that is going to be modified by the bill, or is part of the discussion, does it include the fact that new operators currently aren't allowed to exist in the state as far as skill games are concerned? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Freeman, would you like to respond to that?
Mr. Chairman, without reviewing the bill, I don't have a definitive answer, but my guess is that we want to have other people that that would like to have the games. I like the testimony that was said that it's a game of skill and is for amusement, so we should have appropriate limits on the games. I think that we have to extend the date, and I would also suggest that there is a look back date 5 years down or whatever is appropriate between the agency and the owners of these business to look to see how things are going. That was my intention.
Okay, so a yes to both questions that John had. I'm looking for any hands up for any further comments. John, would you like to comment again after that clarification?
Mr. Chairman, no, I would just ask maybe if LSO could be given a little bit of discretion in kind of coming up with the language for the bill, And then if Representative Freeman is okay, I may reach out to him online, offline, just to make sure that the bill is going the direction that his motion intended.
Yeah, I'm going to open this back up for public testimony again and see if the people present or listening have any comments as a follow-up. Is that outline what your testimony was concerned about? We're getting nods here in our audience. I don't see Mr. Mosier on here anymore, or Mr. Brown. Chris, would you like to make a comment on this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, not anticipating this discussion, I'm shooting from the hip a little bit, but I would, from our perspective, Mr. Chairman, I believe that the bill clearly defines and separates between legitimate games of skill and not. And our hope would be to eliminate the sunset date and allow for new games to be able to be put into new locations, as Senator Anselmi Dalton alluded to earlier. We don't necessarily have concern with the cap on how many games per location or the other details in that, in those specifics, but eliminating the sunset and having the ability to put new legitimate games into new locations would be our preference if the committee does move this bill forward, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. We have some testimony from Mr. Downing now, so we'll go to that and then we'll come back to you, John.
Okay, now am I unmuted? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one other area that the committee might want to look at, Pace as a company prefers to prepay its taxes as a good housekeeping measure when it's filling their machines and those types of things. And so that way the taxes are paid up front. You heard testimony earlier about roughly about 240,000 that's sitting in a prepaid tax account in Pace's world right now. But if there's an option to look at as far as flexibility for companies to prepay their taxes on potential skills games would be being played, that also helps on cash flow for the state as far as getting those payments up front versus having to try and collect them later on, is what we've seen in other jurisdictions. And so as far as the overall concept, very supportive of it and appreciate the committee looking forward on this.
So you're suggesting that you pay the taxes sooner and like with the same month they're collected, or how would that, what are you proposing exactly? So
Mr. Chairman, with our system, it's essentially you're paying for the fills so that you can have you can essentially have the play on the game. And so when that play on the game has expired, then the machine no longer will operate. When we collect the pay on the fills for those games, we also collect the tax at that time from the operators. And the challenge that we didn't foresee with some of the language within the bill is that being able to prepay our taxes, we're not able to do that right now under the current legislation. We would like to prepay those taxes, partly as a good housekeeping measure, but also it's beneficial to the state as far as cash flow.
Do you think all vendors are going to have this same point of view?
That I can't speak to, Mr. Chairman. However, I would, if there's an option for vendors to prepay, I think was how the language would be as far as either prepaying the taxes or going with the current system. That's what it would be nice to take a look at.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. I don't see any hands up. I'm going to go back to Mr. Brown and see if that's something they can live with or recommend.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Chris Brown again. That is not the system that we operate on. And so I guess my shooting from the hip, Mr. Chairman, I would say if that is an option for them to be able to participate that way, but not a mandate that everybody needs to participate that way, I don't see where we would have an issue with that. As long as it's defined that folks pay their taxes on time, I don't know that we would have an issue with that, Mr. Chairman. But again, Paysomatic and Mr. Downing's clients handle the paying of taxes differently than my clients do. And so if that is written in there as an additional option, I don't believe we'll have an issue.
Okay, I see Mr. Mosier has reappeared. Mr. Mosier, would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I got booted off and had problems getting booted back in. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Mosier once again. To Representative Freeman's comments, and I got blocked out a little bit, so I haven't heard the more recent comments. But I thank the committee for that consideration. I think both eliminating the sunset and allowing new games to be installed, and of course, Mr. Moore can look at each location that's opening up, but I think that lifeline would be vital and a great comfort to those businesses that are going through what they're going through. I don't know about how the language would be worded, but Mr. Moore has done an excellent job thus far, and I would see him being just as prudent and cautious with any expansion into new businesses. So I support it, and I thank the committee so much and Representative Freeman for your consideration on this.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Okay, Representative Freeman, go ahead.
in my motion, I suggested that LSO, the agency, and the companies that are involved get together and come up with the draft legislation. So what we're talking about is something that I think that could be best handled with the agency and the vendors and LSO than us trying to figure out and understand the problem right now. So I like the idea of the options of different ways that you can pay for the taxes. I understand that they don't want to have a sunset because then they have to come back to the legislature, and I kind of agree with them. But I think that someplace in the bill should be a consideration to where that this is a wonderful complexion, but it has a wart in the middle of it that we have to take care of. So that's my feelings.
Okay, before we go back to our staff, to John, I have a question for Jonathan and Catherine. The question is there any reason you can't pay your taxes now without actually having to put it in legislation?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Catherine Wilkinson, Cowboy Skill.
And speak up.
Mr. Chairman, yes, currently we did reach out to the Gaming Commission and they just did not see a way to do that with the way the current statute is written with requiring the weekly. So if it could even be written that they're given a little more discretion, I believe, on how to do it. That way we don't conflict with other companies. We would just like the ability to do so for us if possible.
Something like if they want to pay their taxes early, they can, something like that added to the legislation. Okay, I think that's all we need. And maybe Mr. Moore needs to come back up before we go back to John. Did you have any follow-up comments, Mr. Moore, before we go to our staff?
No,
Is the mic on?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Got it? Thank you. Chairman Miller, again, this is, it could be a very simple fix, I think. And, you know, getting the taxes ahead of time makes a tremendous amount of sense, and having it in place. But the way the statute is currently crafted, we're unable to do that. So that has been our interpretation, and it makes complete sense doing so. It does create a little bit of a documentation trail that we've got to work on, because it is based on the net proceeds for the week, but we can make this work. It would be nice to have that money in.
Okay, thank you. And just stay right there because we're going to go to our staff now. John, please come back to us and give us your comments.
Okay, just a question again. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. The committee had discussed extending the deadline or eliminating it, and the motion is to just completely eliminate the sunset date.
Well, we'll have to go to Representative Freeman for that. Representative Freeman, are you proposing eliminating it or just pushing it out a few more years?
I think what I said is that I would like to see the sunset dates go away with some sort of mention that the TRW committee would look at the law and see that if it would be functioning the way that it intended.
Okay, John, did you catch that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the idea would be to eliminate the sunset date and then require the Gaming Commission to report back to the TRW committee, basically on how the regulatory framework is operating in regard to the skill-based amusement games. Okay.
Yeah. And also allow new vendors in. That's part of it. And also a line that allows early payment of taxes.
Mr. Chairman, this is just maybe a question for the commission or the committee. With that, it seems maybe a simple fix would be to allow taxes to be prepaid as provided by rule of the commission. I'm wondering if, that is one option. That could be too much delegation of authority depending on what the committee believes, but that is a simple fix that comes to mind on this issue.
Well, with no objection, I think that's going to be okay. I don't see any hands up. Well, I do see one hand up. We have a hand up here, Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a concern. This commission is far too young to be getting rid of the sunset date. It should, if this is going to go on, we should have maybe a few more years to make sure we work out all the kinks first before we even think about getting rid of a sunset date. Because yeah, it's only a few months old and we're already thinking about getting rid of a sunset. No. Yeah, we need to have another sunset date, come back, look at it, and then maybe think about it. But yeah, it's far too soon to be getting rid of a sunset date. Thank you.
Okay, the motion right now is to draft the bill, eliminating the sunset date and also allowing new vendors to come into the market. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Representative James, are you making a proposed amendment to change it back to a sunset date?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We have a motion for an amendment and a second. What date are we going to put for a sunset date?
We're going to keep it to the original sunset date and come back to it then. We're not going to change. We're going to come back to it at 2021.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask who the second
Okay,
was? I didn't see.
Senator Driscoll.
That doesn't work. It's got to be done in session. So it's going to have to be a bill in session. Otherwise, what you've done is effectively eliminated the games out there. So just for clarification to the committee, if you wait till 2021, you'll have a lapse and all the games will be made illegal. And then you're going to come back. So the only way to continuously have them, and I'm not arguing either side of the bill, but in order to do it, either you can extend it for another years or eliminate it, or if you do nothing, it's done. They're just out of there and gone. So that's clarification. If I'm wrong, please let me know.
Okay, yeah, right now, the bill, the statute is 2021. Are you suggesting that we leave it there or do you have a new date?
Mr. Chairman, I'll I'll extend it for another to 2022. Give it another year.
Okay, we have an amendment to extend the sunset date to 2022. Further discussion? Further discussion?
Second.
The second,
Yes.
Representative Edwards, you were fine with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Representative Yen may have a question. He was trying to talk earlier.
Okay, let me see. Representative Yen, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask who the second was because I didn't see it on the video portion.
Okay, Edwards was the second to the motion. Okay, I'm looking for any hands up. I see none. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye or give me a thumbs up. Okay, we have 4. What Senator Moniz also is an aye. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks like we have 6. John, does this take a majority on the amendment, the majority House, majority Senate?
Mr. Chairman, this would be an official action, so my understanding of the committee's rules is yes.
Roll call then.
Okay, well, we're still on the amendment. Yeah. So I think the amendment passed. Did you count the House members there, John?
No, but I counted the Senate and we didn't have a majority of the Senate.
Or you didn't have a majority of the Senate? Okay, so the amendment fails. So we're back on the proposed bill draft. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Freeman has a comment.
Mr. Chairman, I would like this this amendment to pass because what the amendment actually does is gives LSO the directive to draft legislation. And then I think that amendments like Senator James can be better handled dealing with this with specific language rather than a concept, which is what my
Okay, John, did you have some comments again?
Yeah, just a point of clarification. The committee is now voting on Representative Freeman's motion. Is that correct?
We voted on we voted on the amendment, so we're back on the motion now for a draft bill. So I don't see any further discussion. Do you have any further comments, John?
Just maybe a request. If Representative Freeman would like industry to reach out with their thoughts, I would just ask that those could possibly be routed through the chairman rather than having all those calls perhaps come into LSO and being potentially unmanageable.
I have no problem with that.
Okay, I agree. I think the co-chair has no problem with that. Okay, so any further discussion on the motion to draft legislation for the upcoming special session? Seeing none, Mary Beth, can you take roll?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Since this is simply just a request to LSO to create a bill draft for further discussion by the committee, you don't require a roll call.
Okay. The point being is if we want this in the special session, how do we get this approved by the committee for the special session? If, Mr. Co-Chair.
We'd have to go to management council and ask for a email vote.
Okay.
It's the only way we can do it is to get a bill draft, is my belief, and John Brody can tell us different, but what we've seen in the past is it'll go to management council to allow them to do an email vote on it.
Okay, John, did you catch that from the co-chair that we could do an email vote once we see and have reviewed the draft?
Chairman, you could do an email vote. You could also conduct a short Zoom meeting for consideration of the bill. It's the chairman's prerogative. But another meeting will be required of some sort to vote.
Okay, Representative Task.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question on the procedure. If we, excuse me, if we don't have to have the majority of both houses to advance this request for a bill draft, why did we need a majority of both houses to change or amend the request, since this is only a request for a bill draft? I don't see how come we would need both houses for just amendment in it, and then we go ahead with the whole bill request for a draft without such a vote. Thank you.
Okay, John, can you answer that that question? I think you're muted, John.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. I couldn't hear Representative Tass through the Zoom platform.
Okay, the question was, why do we need a majority of the House and don't need the majority of the House and the majority of the Senate for the draft request? Or do we? Did you catch that, John?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking, Mr. Chairman, in hindsight, I think Representative Tass raises a valid point. Since the bill itself is just for discussion purposes, I think there's a valid argument that the rule for the majority of each house shouldn't apply. So I think he's correct. Thank you, Representative Tass.
Okay. We'll go back to Representative Tass. Do you have any further comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think we ought to go back and revote then on Representative Freeman's motion to, or maybe it was, I'm sorry here.
Representative James, or Senator James.
Representative James, or Senator James said we extend that deadline for one more year.
Okay, we're going to go back and vote on the previous amendment to this motion to extend from 2021 to 2022. Is that correct, Senator James? Okay, so let's take the vote on that. Please raise your hand if you're an aye on the amendment. Okay, I count 5 ayes. John, are you counting there too?
Mr. Chairman, I counted 5 as well.
Okay, pardon? Well, I counted 5. I just looked at the screen here for hands. So the amendment fails. So we're back on the bill. Further discussion on the motion to draft this bill. Seeing none. Okay, did someone have a comment?
No question.
Okay. Question being called. All those in favor, raise your hand. I'm only counting 6. Mr. Co-Chair, what are you seeing there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only see 6. So amendment fails.
That's the bill.
Pardon?
That's the bill.
Oh, this was the amendment failed, and now the draft bill failed. Okay. This topic is over then.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I had a message from Senator Hank Coe, who was watching on YouTube, requesting that Senator Driscoll speak into the microphone so that they can hear him.
Okay. Senator Driscoll, did you hear that?
Will do. I'm just a silent senator.
Okay, that's it for, did I see someone wanting to make a comment? Does anyone want to comment on this? Okay, Representative Freeman, go ahead.
I think that it'd be just for proper order that you also have ayes and nay votes so that you have an understanding of what's going on, because sometimes people don't vote. But if it doesn't have 7 votes, there's no reason to go forward.
Okay, we have a call for ayes and nays, and Mary Beth, can you do that, please?
Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Aye.
Senator James.
No.
Senator Moniz.
No.
Senator Wasserberger.
Aye.
Representative Edwards.
No.
Representative Flitner.
No.
Representative Freeman.
Aye.
Representative Haley.
No.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Tass.
No.
Representative Winter.
No.
Representative Yin.
No.
Co-Chairman Driscoll. Co-Chairman Driscoll.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Miller.
Aye.
I believe that fails, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, that was my count also. 6 ayes and 8 noes.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you are muted.
We're going to move on to the next topic now, which under my list is Wyoming Office of Tourism. Do we have Diane ready to go? Diane, you're up.
Turn on your mic.
Turn on your mic.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Diane Schober. I'm the Executive Director at the Wyoming Office of Tourism. And just want to give you a brief update today on where we are with the industry and everything that's happening in the world of travel as we deal with the COVID virus. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to share my screen.
Please do.
Thank you. Okay, I assume everyone can see this just fine. Wanting to go back and just revisit some of the things that we talked about when we were together in June, just about a month ago, and and what the work we're doing. As a reminder, this visual is where we were pre-COVID. This is what we were planning for a summer marketing campaign, a fully integrated campaign that would use a broad range of digital, broadcast, print as in travel magazines, lifestyle magazines, international work, and then out of home. As we moved through March and April, May, June, the realities of what's happening in the travel world have certainly changed how we're marketing. And I shared with you last month the loss in lodging performance and just some of the economic realities. And again, this was just updated with June numbers from the Wyoming Division of Economic Analysis. The leisure and hospitality sector is down again, the largest loss of jobs, 28.4%. As the state's largest private sector employer, this is significant and remains significant in Wyoming's economy. We lost 10,500 jobs. The leisure and hospitality, which is one of the leading contributors to sales and use tax in the state, is down 35.2% in the month of June. And they're causing this is big impacts. And you can see from the following information that the lodging performance is why it's that we saw a lot of people coming and camping, but camping has a tendency to remain, campers are, usually they come self-contained for the most part. And people who are traveling, staying in overnight hotels, they're eating out more, they're doing more activities. And so it certainly, if we don't have all of that volume, it can make a big impact on the overall visitor economy and the economic benefits. So occupancy, as you can see from comparatively, and we did not have the June numbers when I sent this in, but for May, in 2019, in May a year ago, the statewide average was 61%. Statewide average in 2020 is only 31%. That's down 49% in occupancy. The revenue per available room in May of 2019 was $62.47. In May of 2020, $23.51. That's a constriction of 62%. And so when we think about the lodging performance being a strong indicator of the visitor economy, you can see that the impacts of COVID have certainly made a huge impact. There is virtually no meeting or convention business right now, which is so much what hotels rely on. And also there's absolutely no international travel. And so when you have those two sectors that are so tightly constricted, the only one that's really left is the leisure travel, the leisure segment. And that's where we're still working to try to impact whatever we can and leverage and maximize the leisure component and the leisure travel while listening to and following all of the other things that are shaping our decisions. When I sent this over to Mary Beth a week ago, we were feeling a little bit optimistic because Arrivalist, which is a company that looks at performance around bookings and advanced bookings and forecasting, had trends starting to peak up a little bit. In fact, a week ago, the daily travel index was higher than right before COVID, which was a really strong thing. The travel index is essentially people's interest and willingness to travel. But I just received some information yesterday that, this is starting to constrict again, and people are not only feeling fearful of travel, but they're also, they feel like maybe they can't go and have as good a time as they once did. And so we're having to take a lot of this into consideration as we're adjusting. We're now on 2-week sprints. I said, this is hard for someone like me, where I'm used to making plans, and we have strategic plans. We lay them out a year in advance. We follow those. We make adjustments as we go. Now it's 2 weeks at a time as we're going through this and taking in all the information. The good news still remains is that the activities that travelers want to participate in during their summer travels sits right in our wheelhouse. And so you can see that, going to relax or recreate at a lake or a river, visit a national park, a state park, or a monument, to participate in other outdoor activities. These are Wyoming's wheelhouse. And as I had said to you before, the thing that's really nice about that is we don't have to reinvent our product. We don't have to repurpose who we are. We get to be genuinely authentic to Wyoming and to the vacation experience. It's just, we've had to modify how we communicate these in order to still communicate safety and responsibility. I also a month ago had shared with you that we had to break up how we were doing all of our marketing. And prior to, we're in what we're calling our rebound stage right now. But prior to June, we were really in a crisis stage, and it was just about safety and assurance. And we had very, very little marketing that was going out. But we did launch our rebound campaign the middle of June. We spent $1.1 million. All of the creative still has the messaging of why responsibly along with that's why, mostly on drive markets. And you can see it has paid social, paid search, just a lot of digital, because we wanted to stay nimble and flexible in how we could adjust this. What outlets are performing very well? How do we want to maximize the dollars that are spent? And just as a reminder that all of the out of home and the print were placed prior to March. And so those are still, for those particular outlets, those are still in place. We had hoped to launch recovery around the middle of July. And it would indicate that people could, inspiring them to proactively travel. But as of yesterday in our last meeting, I think we're going to pause this recovery effort and not start it the middle of July. I think we'll wait and postpone it a little bit. And we're going to extend some of the components of our rebound campaign just because they give us a little bit more flexibility. We can save some money and just see how well people are engaging and if consumer sentiment will remain at a level that is indicating that people still want to travel. One of the things that we launched that's been very successful with us is we put, and this was an additional program that we added just in response to COVID, and in order to be able to disperse people along all of the routes and these drive markets. We have 4 routes: the Salt to Stone, the Black to Yellow, the Rockies to the Tetons, and the Park to Park. And they're just really marketing aggregators and for road trips, but there are 4 of those. And so we covered 100% of the expenses, and then partners could opt in to an additional social activity. This was all happening through June and July, but now we're going to continue it through July, maybe even into September. The geography is broad, about a 14 to 15 hour drive. It's open to all Wyoming industry partners. We're leveraging all of our existing assets, so we're not spending a lot of money in new creative. And the media, of course, remains flexible and adaptable to insights that are coming forward with us. And so there's general messaging around the wide open roads, but then you can see some of the digital components that are highlighting. And then underneath that are where social posts can start to come in. And so these are examples of what we're doing in terms of social posts through the Wyoming Office of Tourism. These happen to be all Facebook posts that we were using, but then there's a landing page for each one of these routes. And then there's rich content there with stories and things to do, highlighting all of the communities along these routes. And then here are just a few examples of some of the partners that have bought in to the co-op so far. But we actually have partners from all over the state. Carbon County, Sweetwater County, Fremont County have all purchased into this. We are extending some of the programs now where people can expand their buys. We're adding more marketing opportunities, including some in-state marketing for event marketing. We're dovetailing with our current program. There'll be an opportunity to expand the brand awareness through this campaign, but then really giving all the locals a chance to amplify their own voices and utilizing a lot of, like I said, in-state media so that we can work on promoting events and the activities that are still happening. And then boosting, tourism in those local communities is the entire goal. So as I said, there's a variety of packages that'll be out there. The campaigns are built around existing templates so that we can leverage all of the existing assets and save money to our partners and to the Wyoming Office of Tourism. We also wanted to share with you, I know all of you are on our distribution list for the newsletters, but this is now the Why Now example of our newsletter, which shows you that here are some events that are still happening around Wyoming. And then there's different sections of the state that will highlight entertainment. And then we also have added an important part of Mask Up Wyoming in order to help prevent the spread of the COVID virus and keep residents and visitors safe. And so we've added a whole toolkit and with artwork and assets for the Mask Up Wyoming. And so that's an example of our newsletter. Again, continuing on with these programs just to elevate what we can with local communities across the state. Then I wanted to just update you quickly, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, on where we were with our CARES Act funding proposal requests. When we were together in June, I had mentioned to you that we were requesting $140,000 to be a reimbursement for an in-state campaign that the Office of Tourism had deployed. We received those funds. That campaign wrapped up the end of June. And so we were able to, we were reimbursed prior to the end of the fiscal year. And so the monies that were spent out of our budget for general funds were reverted back as the coronavirus relief funds supplemented and came in and covered that in-state campaign. Then we wrote another proposal spending for PPE, for predominantly masks, to distribute to visitor information centers across the state, to be handed out to visitors in order to keep them safe, to have them follow the guidelines that have been recommended. That was approved. The masks arrived this week. We ordered 500,000. Some of those have already been distributed to some of the information centers across the state. But all information centers that are operated through chambers or lodging tax boards are eligible based on the quantity. We have 100,000 masks remaining here in Cheyenne in our office, which we want to get out and distribute. So those are available. Then the other thing that I think is probably the most exciting is on June 24th, the U.S. Department of Treasury issued a new set of FAQs regarding coronavirus relief funds, which clarified that state and local governments could use these funds for destination marketing organizations to remarket their convention facilities and their tourism industry. A destination marketing organization is the equivalent of your local lodging tax board. And so as all of you know, you have your local lodging tax boards. And so when we say DMO, that's the same thing. We're referring to your local lodging tax board. And so based on those guidelines, we wrote a proposal and submitted it to the governor's office and then had it sent over to the attorney general's office so that it was could be understood if it met the letter of the guidelines. And it did. We got word yesterday that it is, the program was approved. It's for $5 million. And we'll be distributing that out to your local, based on an application process, to every local lodging tax board. If they qualify, they'll submit an application. And so I know you had a lot of discussion around this very topic at your June meeting, and I wanted to let you know that we were able to leverage the $5 million to be able to get out for some local relief funding. It's important to utilize these funds in a way that the local communities can do it, because the local communities are boots on the ground. They understand the needs locally. And to some, it may appear that there are a lot of visitors, and maybe there are in certain areas. We know that that's actually not really the case. The numbers don't indicate that they're staying long or doing as many things as we had wanted them to. But not only just for the moment of this summer, but these funds would also be eligible to be used for extending tourism promotion into the fall for those that have winter product. Also, any public health awareness work that would be done, that would be deployed, would be eligible to be qualified for the use of these funds. And so we'll be working closely with the local DMOs as they're interested in helping them understand what those guidelines are in specific programs. It just, as I said, we just got the approval yesterday. And so we will, we have some communication efforts ready to go, letting all of the lodging tax boards across the state be aware that this program has been approved and there are funds available for their immediate use if they qualify through the application. And that, Mr. Chairman, is just a really quick, brief update. It is, as I said, you know, we're managing in 2-week sprints. And so if I'm with you again at your next meeting, we may have a different update, but that is where we are with the tourism economy. Our office is still, you know, working hard to make sure that we can leverage what we can for visitation. And hopefully when we start to see some of the June numbers coming in a little bit more fully, maybe on hotel performance, we will have seen a better improvement. And I certainly know that by July, I think that at the end of this month, we should see some improvement, hopefully across the state in certain areas. With that, I am here and would entertain any questions that any of you may have.
Thank you for that, Diane. You mentioned that you were going to pause maybe some of the near future advertising. Can you just expand that just a little bit?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, when we, in March, when all of this first came down, we paused everything. And so we only launched just in June, $1.1 million of our remaining advertising budget. So we still have another 1.1 million sitting in that advertising budget for this year, for 2020. And we were going to move, shift out of the current messaging and shift into a more direct approach to Travel Now. And we were going to launch that campaign in the middle of July. We're going to postpone that for a little bit, maybe till the end of the month, see how things are going. But that's what we're doing. Part of that is still, the 1/3 of that is still on pause. And so, and we may end up adjusting and moving some of that budget in to extend this rebound campaign. So it's the same budget that was there. We're just utilizing it in a very different way in today's world.
Thank you for that further explanation. Senator James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the $5 million that's going to the lodging tax boards, I may have missed it, but how are they going to be spending that money? Could you expand on that a little bit more for me, please?
Mr. Chairman and Senator James, the guidelines for how destination marketing organizations can spend the money is for any kind of tourism recovery efforts. So encouraging people to travel safely, to resume tourism activities, highlighting and promoting the things that are available within their areas. That is all part of, it falls under the guideline section 5 of those federal guidelines, which is it's basically an economic stimulus. I don't remember the exact words right now, but that's what the purpose is. And they can also spend them for the promotion of raising awareness around public health and encouraging visitors to be safe. And so it just is, it's around the activities of what a lodging tax board would do as it falls within stimulating the economy in the COVID crisis.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if they're going to be, if you gave $5 million for the local lodging tax to do that, then why are you holding up on your advertising on travel and stuff? Wouldn't you also want to be advertising as well if it's okay for the local lodging tax boards to be doing that as well? Wouldn't you want to be doing as much advertising to encourage as many people to come here as possible? I mean, that just makes sense in my mind anyway.
Mr. Chairman, Senator James, thank you. I was not clear on that. These funds can also, they can be reimbursable for any expenses from March through current expenses today that would qualify. Most of the local lodging tax boards have already invested money into some recovery tourism efforts. And so those are reimbursable if they qualify for like the messaging that's defined there to stimulate the economy for safety around travel. And so there would be much of that, but then they would also have the same if we're extending hours. And we're not pausing everything. We're just not planning to launch that particular messaging at this time. We will be evaluating it in 2 more weeks and decide if we want to extend, keep extending rebound, or if we want to go into our recovery. By the time the lodging tax boards have this money, it'll probably be the end of July. But they can also, like I said, it's reimbursable for expenses that you have incurred during this entire time and for expenditures leading up through and to December 30th.
Follow up? Okay, further comments, questions for Diane? Committee? Seeing none, Mary Beth, do we have anyone in the Zoom window well, I guess we'll go to public comment now, if there's no more questions for Diane. And Mary Beth, do we have anyone in the Zoom room that may want to testify?
Mr. Chairman, no one signed up for this particular topic. However, I don't know if you have someone in person.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. I don't think we have anyone in person. We have a couple people here and they're nodding no. So Diane, we're going to take a break now, and then we do have a bill that kind of falls on your bailiwick. We'll work it after our little break here.
I'll be here in case you need me.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Just take a 10-minute break, please. Mary Beth, I think we're ready to go.
We are back, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, are we turned back on YouTube also?
I just dropped the screen share, Mr. Chairman, so we should be.
Okay, very good. So the next item on the agenda is our working draft 21 LSO 36, version 4, it looks like. And I'm going to go to our co-chair and have him review this. Mr. Co-chair.
Okay, I'm gonna load you off to mute.
Got it.
Okay, this is a bill draft we all asked for at the last time we were together. COVID-19 tourism sector relief programs. I think as you all know, when we did the 4 bills in the special session, we left a hole in there that left a group of businesses and events that were unable to access COVID funds. And this directly takes a swing at trying to get those folks where they can do it. And it's some of the most important organizations we have. These are the base of our community organizations of what we do. So high level overview is exactly what I just gave you. I'll kind of work through the bill page at a time. Anybody can stop and ask questions at any time, or we'll work through them at the end. The first page is just boilerplate on it. Same way with the second page. These are in every COVID bill. They're all basically the same. Third page, same. Fourth page, same. COVID's made it where these bills can be really long. Fifth page is basically the same. Bottom page 5 has a note on it on how it works with the rules. And then on page 6, line 20, we start into the definition pages that talks about business council, what an event is, eligible event. Talks about how they do it. You got to have 250 people minimum to show up to make it happen. The event has to have a proven economic impact on the community or the region. The event takes place defined by rule of the council. So we're leaving the council some latitude to work on this, but there's lots of events in Wyoming. I found out a lot more that these are regional events. One of them, I'm looking at the back of the room at Commissioner Novotny. Longmire Days in Buffalo is a major regional event. I've attended it myself. It is not happening this year. And those events not only bring people into the community and fill motel rooms and do attendance, they generally provide money that goes back out to certain areas of the community to promote our community. So on page 7, we go to subsection C, applies a portion of the revenue to the event to a charitable purpose or for a charitable program. And they're going to define that. So what this does is it makes it where the event actually has to have an impact and the money goes to something other than to make the outfit run again. It's not building outfits. Romanet D has conducted annually in the state for not less than 5 years prior to the start date of the enactment. Any state or government, Wyoming required the cancellation of the event in response to it. So basically it covers what Senator James was talking to me earlier about. Basically it says why order issued by state or local government that causes the cancellation. So they're going to have to go through business council rules and say, look, here's why we couldn't have the event. It wasn't because we didn't feel like it in response to the pandemic. E, operated by a business or organization that's headquartered in Wyoming or its principal operations in Wyoming. This stops the big national nonprofits from coming in and mining us. Romanet III, required cancellation means the cancellation of an eligible event that was ordered and necessitated by the state or any local government of Wyoming through an order or issued in effect on or after March 15 in response to the pandemic. So they've got to have a legitimate reason that it was COVID related, your local health officer, state health officer, etc. B, Wyoming Canceled Event Stipend Program is hereby created. Wyoming Business Council establishes and administers a program to reimburse business and organization to operate eligible events and the cost of required cancellations. Stipends awarded under this section shall, little Romanette I, not be awarded until an eligible events business or organization submits and the council approves an application. Application be developed by the council and shall require each applicant to certify that the business or organization operates an eligible event defined by the section. And if you knowingly make a false statement, prohibited, may be required to repay all funds under the section. Little Romanette II, be conditioned upon the applicant certifying the council business organization operates the eligible event, incurred actual loss as a result of required cancellation. So they can't just come in and make an estimate of what they lost. They're gonna have to bring the books from past year's events or have them available to show what their expenses were, what their income was, and what the net was, because they're not gonna allow them just to come in and say, I lost $100,000. And turns out on a normal year, they spend 90,000 putting it on. So it's a net deal. Little Romanette III, be commensurate with the size of the canceled event and actual incurred loss, including the financial resource expended requiring event staffing and for securing event services, exhibits, and entertainment. Council shall rule establish a stipend award formula consistent with the requirements of this paragraph and may include additional factors as necessary. In no event shall a stipend be issued under this section exceed $150,000. So they're not huge dollar amounts on them. Be made only with funds provided to the state government of Wyoming under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic CARES Act. So what it says, we're not going to use general fund or other money. If the CARES money is not there, be found illegal or not qualifying, it won't happen. Awarding stipends under this section, council should give preference to those businesses and organizations that operate eligible events that as the date of submitting an application for a stipend under subsection B have not received any other funding from the PPP established by the CARES Act. So if they took money from the PPP, it's going to pull them out of it. Council should programulate any rules necessary to administer. No expenditure of funds should be made under this section except in accordance with state and federal laws. It's kind of boilerplate. AG shall review in writing the legality of the program and any rules established for the program authorized by a section. I'm probably gonna run an amendment, take that out because AG is dragging all these through, so fair warning. Council may conduct and contract for random audits of businesses and organizations that operate events. Stipends under this section, sure they're right, just says there's an audit function. Reappropriated to Wyoming Business Council, $50 million from out of the CARES Act special session, made available under section 2(cii). If a COVID relief or similarly named account is created for deposit of 19 emergency response fund appropriation made from that account. And we've got that right now. I believe it's that bigger amount that's there. Used only for established operation of the program. This is just boilerplate for the Business Council. And then we go on to section 3, which is on page 12. And same thing, we go through definitions again on 3. It's got about the same thing. And then we get into the meat of it on top of page 13. Has primary economic purpose to provide entertainment and service to individual engaging in tourism visitor economy. Business that qualify under this paragraph: hotels and motels, bed and breakfast, dude ranches, and other hospitality businesses. So this is probably our hardest hit. Dude ranches in Wyoming are probably one of the ones that are the biggest that's out there that are just totally shut down. They're devastated across the board. So are bed and breakfast. Hotels and motels have had it, and the other hospitality businesses are the same. Line 18, required closure, and it's the exact same wording, says that it has to be closed down by one of the orders that came. The Wyoming Tourism, and they're on page 14 at the top, Tourism Sector Relief Program is hereby created. Business Council shall administer, and this is the exact same rules that we did on the one just above. It goes through what the Business Council does and all the audit requirements and everything else. And that goes all the way to the bottom of page 15, at which point there is a blank area in for us to enter dollar amounts. we'll solicit some testimony and some other on that. And I would guess that that will come in via amendment on the final draft of the bill. We'll go to the, assuming we get a bill draft out, we'll go on and fill that in. And now we're on to page 16. The top of it, it's still the same. It's the same boilerplate we had on the other part of it. The random audits on line 15 on page 17 is another dollar amount to fit in, and all these dollar amounts, I think we'll have testimony from the audience, but we'll also reach out. We'll see if the bill draft, where it goes and what it looks like, fill those in. Going on to page 18, it's the same 18 staff comments that's talked about what the funding does. On page 19, section 4 says on or before November 1, 2020, business councils will estimate the total of funds expended, obligated, necessary for the programs. Any funds reappropriated in excess of the amount reappropriated to the governor's office after November 1st, which is consistent. What we're trying to do is get all the COVID funds that were given to us. We just do not send them to another state. So if people either haven't applied on this, don't qualify, or there's funds left, it does it effective act upon signing. And that's the bill. It fills in holes. And we talked about this in special session when we were there. For all of you that you remember, we left holes in that bill because of the nonprofits and some of the other. This comes across the areas that were not covered were the areas in this bill in agriculture were the only areas left I know of in Wyoming business that haven't had a shot to apply for business council funding. And so this bill is actually a pretty key piece to do a further fill out to take care of these deals. And in my opinion, this bill's really critical. These community events, and we talked about Longmire Days, Hewlett, where I'm from, so it's almost a conflict for me. I participate in it. They've done a turkey shoot for the last 10 plus years. That event provides $100,000 we run our community center with. They don't have the money this year, and we've got a problem with our community center. They can't pay their heat bill. Those events I've heard over and over, they're across the state and they're for real. I don't know if they make money off the wedding of the waters down here on the thing, but these events bring money into our communities, and it's what our fabric is. And so with that, I'll stand for questions, but ask for you to think about what it really does for, because this is as grassroots as it gets on this bill. This is as much as anything we do. I'll stand for questions.
Committee questions? Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question I have is, as they
He's muted.
calculate their
Is your mic on?
as these events calculate their losses, does that just include the money that they laid out? So for instance, we have a Wyoming Outdoorsman Banquet, has about 600 people come. It was scheduled to be April 4th. They had to cancel it, of course, and they had actual expenses out the door. They had rented the facility and paid for that. They had, paid the caterer. I don't know how that all worked. They had definite expenses. Beyond that, they had what they would have earned. So is the eligibility here for their actual expenses and what they would have earned given the historic information that they have on their finances, or would it just be for the actual expenses incurred by the cancellation?
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Newsom, my understanding, the Business Council will come up with final rules, and I think they did a fine job on the last one, by the way. Our intent on this was twofold. Actual expenses go in on that profit and loss. They'll show what it is. In the case that you're talking, and I'll talk in an example. If the event normally generated, say, $100,000 in the end that went out to some type of charitable function there, that's going to be the base number that they'll go to. But deducted from the profits above that, if it's a net 100,000, they're still going to come to that. But they're gonna have to show if they paid a caterer and they had a contract in place, that's an actual expense that's gonna be deducted back across. If they didn't do it, they can't show it as an expense because it didn't happen. Same thing for tickets at the door. If they're used to selling tickets for $100 at the door, they can say, here's what it is. But the bottom line is, we're doing what we did with business, and also what the PPP did was we're backfilling, so they're left whole at the end of the event. No one should benefit from this. This isn't a program to say we actually made more money for the organization we would on a normal year, but we're left whole in the end. That should be the goal of the Business Council.
So it is not limited to their actual out-of-pocket expenses.
It
They
is
get to
not,
add
because-
in there what they would have made, and then that money has to go to the charities that they would have normally donated to.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions in Thermopolis here in the room from the committee? Seeing none, I think I saw Representative Flitner's hand up earlier. Representative Flitner, please turn your mic on and go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. Anselmi Dalton has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm sorry, I was trying to hit this printout. So why are we limiting it to 250? Why not maybe say they're a smaller event, 200 or 150? You know, some of these, I mean, the purse auctions in our ballroom, sometimes I think that benefit some of these things are a little bit smaller. And I'm just asking how we pick that number.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anselmi Dalton, the number was purely just pulled out of a hip pocket on the thing. It was to try to, the example we said, we're really not trying to reimburse for wine tastings. It just buries the Business Council in paperwork. So we tried to hit events that had regional and local significance that were of decent size. And it seemed 250 might be the number. I would suggest if someone's got different numbers, it can be amended. But we really would like to have it where it's events that truly have an impact, not just kind of little ones. If they do numbers of them, they could add them together and make them work by Business Council. They've shown really good signs of Business Council. We're not trying to shut people out in any of these programs. We're trying to effectively spend the COVID funds that we're giving to Wyoming. That's my point to all of you is we've really had a hard time grappling with the public on why we're spending money when the state's broke. And this is money that's going to go to another state if it's not spent. So what we're really trying to do is find effective ways to spend it that's fair, that we can justify. So I'm more than open for an amendment if that's for a different size.
Okay, thank you. Committee, further questions for the co-chairman, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question for LSO, which is, now that it's a little later in the year, has the Treasury spoken out against any particular states' bills on their spending of the CARES Act funding? I'm just trying to measure the risk of whether we get caught holding the ball on some of these funds, or if they would allow us to do this and not ask us to pay it back at some point in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brody.
Mr. Chairman, John Brody, Legislative Service Office. Mr. Chairman, Representative Yin, there has not been any information on whether there's been any clawback by the federal government on any of the CARES Act funds. Kind of related to that is why I put in that staff comment at the beginning of the bill and included the Treasury guidance as part of the materials available for the committee and for the general public. Whether this is or all of the expenses that would be reimbursed through this piece of legislation would be appropriate under the CARES Act is not entirely clear. So it's certainly an issue the committee needs to consider.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Yin and everyone else, I'll respond to it, and I think you're going to see it come. I have visited with the governor's office and others, and I believe every piece of CARES funding that goes out in the state of Wyoming needs to have a line on it when the business council does it that says, should the government decide they're going to claw the money back, that you as an organization are responsible. When you sign off, you understand the risk that this money could get clawed back. And I'm going to be honest with you, I believe it should have been there on the business ones as well. I'm a business guy. I did not apply for it, but I know people that did. It's not fair for our general fund to take the brunt if we have a program that doesn't work right. So I think it's absolutely critical in this bill and any other COVID bill that comes, that you understand when you sign that paperwork with the business council, should the feds come take the money back, that you're the one that's going to have to pay it back. And we'll have that debate when the amendment comes, but I think, should I forget it, that should be in any COVID bill that's out there. If you want a way to really get the state in a bind, is make us go return another $300 million of money back to the feds. We've got enough budget problems without trying to pay back the feds. So that's for your thoughts, and you will see that coming on the bill. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Moniz, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions. First, a reaction to Chairman Driscoll's comments there. I don't think we'd ought to hold the businesses responsible. Any business or event that applies, they're responding to legislation that we're passing. So if we pass this legislation, we shouldn't hold the business responsible. We'd ought to be responsible for the bill that we just passed. That's just my opinion, but I don't think we can expect them to do that. If I was a business and that statement was in there, I wouldn't apply. Second question is, I'll make sure I understand the bill. We're talking about events on page 6, around line 27, about what events are eligible. And then on page 13, line 4, starting, we're talking about businesses that are eligible. So I'm assuming that this bill addresses both of those, not events and businesses as well. And with that, I'd be willing to stand for any questions I might have.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, Senator Moniz. I think your comments are valid, and it just breaks down to how we vote on the amendment on the bill. I really feel strong as a sitting senator. I don't want on my hands to look my constituents or people of the state in the eye and say, I created another big chunk of budget deficit in the state of Wyoming because the feds took something back. And I, as a business owner, am willing to take the responsibility if I collect money and they come claw it back, that I understood when I signed the dotted line that that could happen. And that's my pitch, and that'll be my argument as it comes. But I do think there's probably a split, and it's just voted on as amendment up or down when the time comes.
Okay, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder about
Mike.
I wonder about the events, if we're expecting to claw back that money.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you. Sorry, I've only got one computer. I'm running back and forth doing the bill. And I think that's up to the pleasure of the committee. I really do. The budget situation the state's in, events, businesses, anything is, I'm in tears on what these cuts are going to do to our government. And they're tough. And I don't want to be a part of adding more to it. I want to take care of everybody we can with these coronavirus funds. But I also don't want to make a problem that we have worse because the feds decided they didn't like it. And the feds, by the way, did the same thing to all of us. When you filled out the PPP program, which I did, my business took PPP money. It states very clearly in there that this money can be clawed back from the feds if we either change rules or your application's not right. And I accepted that. When I took that money and they put it in my checking account, my wife and I sat and visited about what happens to us if we take that money and spend it, because some of it we wouldn't have spent. The PPP program did what it was supposed to. We kept 30, 40 people working for a month that would not have been. So I think that it's two-edged sword, but my caution is if we're flirting on the edge, back to the comments, and it looks like we could be, let's not make our problem worse by having to dig general funds. I think we're gonna be fine. Put the disclaimer in. I'm looking at programs in states around us. They're much looser than Wyoming's right now. Particularly in ag programs. I've been watching South Dakota, Idaho, Nebraska, Utah. They're shipping money out to ag producers right now. And they're clearly don't follow rules. So I think when it gets done, it's probably not a problem, but the disclaimer helps. It also makes you more cautious filling the application out. Make sure you're going to be serious about what you apply for. So that's my 2 cents, but we'll argue that point.
Senator Manise.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 17, line 6, section F, it says the Attorney General shall review in writing the legality of the program and any rules established for the program authorized by that section. I think it spells out in the bill that the Attorney General is going to determine whether this is illegal or not. I just, again, am opposed to putting that burden back on any event or business that may apply for.
Hey, Senator, or Mr. Co-Chair again.
Thank you. I think we're getting the debate kind of out of the way. I'd mentioned when I went through the bill, I will once again ask to pull that AG part out, and I'm going to tell you why, and I'll do the argument. So right now, the second phase of the program we did in the special session that we've been talking about, we wanted that money out the door days after the special session. Our AG's office is still reviewing and battling internally whether they do that, and they have blocked. I'm probably going to get a call from our Attorney General over this, but we're not getting money out the door because they're erring on the side of caution. And I want to try to get the money out the door. I'm very worried that we're going to err on the side of the caution until our money goes to California or New York. And I want the money out the door, and that's why I'm there. And I am going to move at some point on this bill to pull that section out that just says, look, if the business council wants to do it, you want to sign off as a business, it's going to be able, and the AG will review it anyway. They review every bill, but it takes that big edge off of it. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question for Chairman Driscoll is, I got PPP funds too, and as did you, but really what we did was use it just to pay employees and pay taxes, keep them on, deep cleaning, do whatever. And all of us, did it different ways. I just don't know why. I guess I would question why you subtracted out. I know we had to for our grant funding from the Business Council, but the losses the businesses incurred, I don't know why we always tie to the PPP funding. I mean, there was some benefit, but it wasn't a total benefit because you had to keep people working and doing tasks and trying to cross-train them, and it wasn't always the most efficient.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Anselmi Dalton, I have no disagreement. I did not like the linkage to the PPP, and it's back to when I was talking standard. These first pages of these bills and that PPP language have creeped its way into every COVID bill. I'm not sure where it originated from, but it's there. And I would suggest if you don't like it to pry it out of the bill. It's not very hard to do. There's 2 sections that take one line to take it out. And I'll probably vote with you.
Representative Tass.
Really understand this scares you. If there's a fairly good chance or a 30% chance that the feds will ask for that money back, and yet money comes to your Chamber of Commerce and they disperse it out to the various fairgrounds and various entities that have lost money that where we want the money to go. And then all of a sudden the feds say, hey, we got to have that money back. And you're going to go out to the fairgrounds and say, give me the money back that you've already paid out to the rodeo contractors for their losses. Well, that is going to evolve into a real impossible situation. Yes, the state shouldn't, it's going to hurt the state if the state has to be responsible for it, but somebody, if they're going to step up and say, oh, we got to shovel this money out quick so California doesn't get it. And then, oh, by the way, there was a mistake. Now give it back so that we can get back to the federal government. I'd as soon give it to California and let California give it back to the government as to put people out of business a second time trying to dig up money that they got to pay their bills. And where you go to the guy you paid your bills to. That's an impossible situation.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you. Great, Mr. Chairman, Representative Tass. Great argument, but the alternative is no funding at all. And that's the interesting part. So we can give them on one hand, we can say, look, just stay the way it is now and you just suffer it out, figure it out. Or on the other hand, we say, we give you a choice. You can take a chance and you may have to give it back, but at least you've got a chance of getting it. And that's where I'm at is, should this bill not pass? There's a very good chance what they have is nothing. They don't have a thing. They're guaranteed not to have anything and to just sit and suffer. And by signing off on it, they're saying, I'd rather take a chance and have to pay it back. And by the way, I don't want to be hung by somebody, but I think the odds of it getting clawed back are somewhere between nil and none. I think every state out there is going to violate the rules wholesale. And when it gets done, they're going to say, however you spend it is fine. As long as it wasn't fraudulent, you're fine. That's my personal belief. But I certainly can't go out there and tell everybody that. You've got to use old-fashioned common sense on how it goes. And I think we can look out and see that out of 50 states aren't following the rules. And for the feds to come back and tell the county fair that they need to give funds back, or to tell a local business to give funds back, I don't think it's going to happen. But I can't guarantee it. And like I said, the alternative is we kill this bill and they're guaranteed to have nothing. They just didn't make it. Some of them won't make it, by the way. Some events will dry up and go away. Some really good events that have gone on won't have the funding to come back on any scale again.
Representative Tass, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. It would be really nice if we had an odds or percentage chance of what our chances are of having to repay the money back. Some sort of, although pretty scary. Do you go broke now, or do you go broke with hoping that you're going to survive and then get hit twice? So I don't know. Is there any
favorable news that they won't require it to come back?
Mr.
I don't know. Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I got it. And I look at it the same way as I do about the COVID masks and business and everything else. It's a personal responsibility issue, and it really is. When you put that statement in there, you assume the risk, as a business or an organization, that it's possible, and you need to sit down and back to that percentage you're talking about. You do it. It's what we did when we applied on the PPP. You read through the paperwork and say, what are the chances this is going to fail? And that's really what our turkey shooting unit will do is, I'm sure, should this bill pass, I'm going to go to one of their board meetings and say, look, folks, you can either have a chance of getting $100,000 and fund your community center for another year, or you can have no money at all. And I can probably tell you what they're going to do is say, look, if we lose it, we got to do a bank loan to operate for the next year anyway. If we get it and it works, they're going to be very careful is what I'm saying, and they're going to weigh those risks. So thank you.
Go ahead, Representative Tass.
Thank you. in my business, we took one of those guaranteed long-term loans at a real low interest rate. We got a sizable amount of money that is certainly helping us through the summer. But it is one that has to be paid back, or maybe they'll forgive it. But the document was that it was a long-term loan. I think it's a 40-year loan and at a low interest rate. Is there some way that we could massage this bill enough that the state's going to stand behind you if they declare it's got to be paid back now? And yet, if that happens, that the person that applies for that could slide into a category of a long-term loan. The state wouldn't lose its money. The people wouldn't get hit with, hey, I got to pay back $150,000 tomorrow. The only way I can raise that is to sell my business, and it won't raise that kind of money. Would that be something that we could do in here that maybe would satisfy both sides?
Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. I'd be very open to that type. The state gets a very minimal return on a lot of its money. So you can go back to a fairly low interest rate loan to let that happen if that was the case. I've talked about that openly on a different form of this, looking at hospitals and clinics that are more clearly not having guidance. And, you know, the state can bond into those positions and do it and still make the money they make now. It's not like we're making 17% on our money. It's a lot of the state's money is, you can probably go to 3 or 4% loans and still be right in there. So no, I think that's a good idea. And it's, I'm not of the skill to write the thing, but I have no problem with it being there and probably would vote for it.
I think the state's return is under 3% on the money, so. Go ahead.
Well, what does it take to get something like that introduced into this bill? That it could at least be considered instead of it's all or nothing, and have a revert back to a loan if the Fed's required to be paid back. Have a long-term loan to the state pay the Fed back, because that's where the money came from. And then we as operators could pay it back over a longer-term loan.
Bring an amendment.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Let's ask Mr. Brody to draft an amendment for you. That's how we do this. Is we've got guys much better than us. If Mr. Brody would work on drafting an amendment, we'll have it ready at the appropriate time for you. I think you did a good job explaining what you want.
I was so moved that we asked LSO.
He'll just do it. You can order him.
We don't need a motion on that.
All right.
Okay.
Please do that, sir.
Okay, Representative Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the issue of attorney generals, can we amend in a timeline for the attorney general? If that's seems to be the problem, is that the attorney general is not acting in a timely manner? Can we put it in this bill to say the attorney general has to have an opinion by some date?
We work the
Co-Chair.
bill, we'll do it that way. I have no problem. I'm not, my goal is to get this bill out of committee. I'm gonna be honest with all of you. This bill's gonna have a hard time. If it doesn't make it out of this committee, it's gonna have a harder time as a personal bill. So I think it's important this committee gets this bill out and we get into a broader body of minds that can fine tune some of these details we're working on here.
It'll have a lot more work.
You know, I can give you an example. You folks did it last year with the gaming bill, and that bill that passed was not the bill that we did, but we got our goals done in hand. And that would be my hope, is that you can find it in your hearts to look at getting this bill out. We're gonna have a lot more input. We've only got a couple in the back of the room and a couple online. I think there's gonna be a lot of input from entities once this bill gets out and gets seen, because it really hadn't been there. As you saw, Mr. Chairman, I forgot about the bill and it wasn't in the package, so I wasn't prepared to present it even, because, and that's my fault. Tom Harrison had called me and I told him it was coming. I just dropped it. So no, I'm happy to deal with any of that, Representative Newsom.
Okay, before we go to Director Schober and the public, any other comments from the committee on the bill or any questions to I guess the bringer of the bill? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go to Diane now and get her comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I would just offer,
Mike.
as I
That's
shared
me.
in that part of my presentation, that when we don't have events that can give visitors another reason to stay longer, I mean, maybe they come here for one specific thing, but how you really grow that visitor economy is by extending the length of stay. And, that's so important. And maybe people will spend an extra night, maybe an extra 2 nights, or they may be inspired to come back in a year, another year with family for events and things that they would like to see. And so it's just a big part of the visitor economy. And we won't really understand the impact of the loss of some of these events until much later. When you have overflow events, in an example like Cheyenne Frontier Days, which not only, fills up lodging here in Cheyenne and in Laramie County, but also in other areas over in Albany County, I mean, there will be a lot of impacts. And so I would just encourage you as you work through this, that this is a need, and we want to preserve those to be whole going forward. Every opportunity we can to preserve what's a very big part of this economy is going to be important for the remainder of 2020 and moving in, to 21 and 22. So I don't have any other specifics that I would comment on, other than I think that supporting events in a way that they deserve. Many of them are operating as a business. And so I think that's really important. And I, appreciate the time and the effort that you're taking here as a committee to review this and see where and how you can be assured that this particular sector of our industry is also being assisted through these federal funds. Thank you. And I would answer any questions if you have them specifically.
Questions for Director Schoberg, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Sherwood, thank you, as always, for being here and presenting to us. Do you know how many of the large events around the states are run by nonprofit organizations versus profitable businesses? Thank you, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
ahead, Director.
Mr. Chairman and Representative Yin, I do not. That would, I'm sure there are organizations who could find those, but find that answer for you. And I would only be speculating if I provided an answer to you. I don't know the answer specifically.
Okay, further questions, committee, for Director Schober? I don't see any. Okay, so we'll come back to the committee and go to public comment now. I believe Mr. Brown has been patiently waiting. Mr. Brown, would you like to comment on this particular bill draft?
I would, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Chris Brown, representing the Wyoming Lodging and Restaurant Association and the Wyoming Travel Industry Coalition. We stand in support of the bill. The events that you all are addressing play a vital role in Wyoming's visitor economy, both at the local level in your communities and at the state level as well. I just have a couple of notes, Mr. Chairman. I want to just respond to a couple of comments that were made through the committee's dialogue. One is in relation to excluding businesses or events that received PPP from the federal government. As I read the bill, my interpretation of it is that much like the business programs that were passed through the first legislative session, it would simply prioritize businesses that didn't receive PPP. My hope would be that that would be the same with this bill as well. There was a comment made earlier about businesses being brought whole, and many of these businesses, no matter how much relief we provide, are not going to be brought whole by the end of this thing. And so I would hope that should the committee choose to weigh in on if you did or did not receive PPP, that it would be prioritizing those that didn't versus excluding those that did. My other comment, Mr. Chairman, would be in relation to the discussion between Chairman Driscoll and Senator Moniz. And boy, that's a tough one. I agree with both of them. If the state was in a position where they had to repay $300 million, given the current scenario, that would be disastrous. Likewise, it would be for private business and these entities that would be taking risk as well. I guess I would urge against the disclaimer that private business would have to pay this back, based on the reasoning that it could cause them hesitation to apply for these funds. And I would urge caution at removing the Attorney General's piece vetting through this program. I think that the Attorney General is the one best poised to vet through the legality of whether these funds can be distributed to these entities or not. And should the Attorney General's piece be removed for businesses that do apply for these funds, that could cause them additional legal burden to vet through and make sure that they minimize their risk. So I realize that's a rock and a hard place, but I'm cautious of the disclaimer that business would have to pay it back and removing the AG's vetting of this process. It would certainly be up to the committee as to whether or not they would put a time frame on how the AG vets that or how quickly they need to. But those are my concerns, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Susan, you're up next, and please introduce yourself and who you represent.
Hi, my name is Sue Castaneda. I'm the CEO of the Cheyenne Animal Shelter here in obviously Cheyenne. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity to speak. I just wanted to just point out that how, I know this is more about tourism, but how it affects charities. Our big fundraising event was supposed to be held in March, the Fur Ball at Little America, and we had to cancel it 4 days before the actual event. That event raises generally between $160,000 to $200,000 for our foundation, which then they reinvest it and give that money back to the shelter on a monthly basis. So in the end, Little America ended up losing probably about $80,000, and we lost the money. We're still trying to work on it virtually. We're going to be one of the virtual events. So if you'd like a bidder number, call and let me know. But also, you know, in the meantime, we had to close the shelter 3 times because of employees who were either exposed or had COVID. So we were able to get the PPP loan, but we'll still be hosting our virtual Fur Ball, our virtual dog jog. So I think there are a lot of caterers and hotels and such that have suffered along with us. So I just wanted to throw that in and just let you know that obviously it's affected all of us, and even our contracts with the city and county, they're not able to pay what they normally do. So I'm ready to answer any questions now. I'm just throwing in some comments. So, thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no one else online for public comment, so I'm going to bring it up back to Thermopolis and see who's here for public comment. Mr. Novotny? Oh, this is right down your alley. You're okay.
First time ever speechless.
Yeah, that's. What do the county commissioners think of this?
The commissioners don't have a position on this, but certainly anything that can be done to assist our local communities recuperate from this pandemic is greatly appreciated.
Okay, committee, sorry, he didn't come up to the mic, but he just made a general comment that he appreciates the effort. Okay, committee, no more public comment. Okay, John, go ahead.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say that it looks like on the Zoom platform, we've lost the public testimony table.
We've lost what?
We have lost the public testimony table.
Oh. Table.
Right here. My computers.
Oh.
Nobody there anyway.
Yeah, we don't have anyone at the table anyway, so I don't think anyone missed anything there. So committee? The bill's been moved by Newsom, second by, I heard a second somewhere. Was that was the co-chair? So committee, this go through the bill. We'll let the co-chair, do we want to do it page by page, Mr. Co-chair?
I already worked through it page by page.
Okay, and any amendments? Okay, Senator Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to amend on page 6, line 30. I would take it down to 100 people. I just think there's a lot of small events that, we have our fur ball and things like that. And, I think it's a decent sized event that helps the Humane Society and things like that. So I'm asking maybe for that number to be changed to 100. I'm hoping for a second.
I'll second.
Okay, the amendment is moved by Anselmi Dalton, seconded by Representative Flitner, and it basically takes it from 250 to 100. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? One no?
Two.
Two noes. Okay, so that amendment passes. Further amendments? Mr. Co-Chair.
Mike.
I'm finding it. You have to. I had to go back and find the bill. We've got several spots that we need to decide if we're going to add dollar amounts in. So on the bottom of page 15 is the amount of the actual losses that we've got. We've got a blank spot. I think in order to do an actual bill draft, we're going to have to put some type of placeholder in there. So my motion would be on page 15, line 21, and this would be for the that end of it. And I would see, that's the one that has, I'm sorry, I'm slow on it. Dude Ranches, hospitality, other business. I'll just throw it out and we'll do it for discussion. I'll throw out $1 million on that one. And that sounds like a lot of money, but if you're running a Dude Ranch, and I guess I'd ask for a comment from Commissioner Novotny in the back, but what kind of losses might some of these ranches be looking at on seasonal? Is that all right, Mr. Chairman, to ask him?
That's fine.
I'm really out of my area of expertise here.
Just a second. Is the mic?
It's not.
Is the mic
going to work there?
I can go do it. That's what I was working on.
Probably not, because this has been logged out.
Why don't you just come up to someone's computer and start talking?
I can come over.
Okay, Mr. Novotny, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Driscoll, your question as to the losses that some of the Dude Ranches are going to face. Certainly some of my membership that you're looking in the range of several hundred into several $1 million, depending on the size and the scope of the operation. But I think $1 million is probably a good start.
Okay, we have the motion. I didn't hear a second yet. Who wants the second? Representative Cass has seconded the motion. Any further discussion? Representative Flitner.
Mr. Chairman, I was just seconding the motion.
Thank you, Representative Flitner.
Any further discussion on the motion? Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe LSO knows this offhand or someone else on the committee, but do you know what number we have for a maximum stipend in the other programs that we enacted in the special session?
Mr. Chairman, I believe 300,000.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Brody.
Mr. Chairman, I'm bringing up House Bill 4 at the moment. So the first program created under that bill was a $50,000 cap on the stipend award. The cap on the second program created under that bill was $300,000. The cap on the third program created under that bill was $500,000. And Mr. Chairman, under House Bill 1004, those were the caps.
Okay, thank you, John, for that. So we have a motion and a second on the table, page 15, line 21, to insert 1 million in there. Further discussion? Representative Yin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, so my concern ultimately is if we make this number $1 million and we don't have a number for how much we're going to put in the program, but let's say we put in $300 million, for example. So you could have a maximum number almost of only 300 companies that could help. My concern ends up being, are we helping the most number of companies by putting a maximum of $1 million? That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What, was there an amendment in there somewhere, Representative Yin?
No, I have no amendment to the motion. I may make another motion. I just want to see how this motion ends up. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion, amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Flitner.
Thank you. And this would go to your co-chair Driscoll. Would you like to amend your amendment? Because I believe Representative Yin makes a good point. 1 million seemed logical, but I would be more inclined to help more people than fewer. Your comments.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Co-chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm open to a friendly amendment to lower it down. I think it's going to be a floor debate when it goes to session anyway. I merely put it as a placeholder, and so I guess with my second opinion, I'd move it to $500,000. We can debate it on the floor. It seems that's probably where everybody's heading, and I don't have a personal preference on it. Okay. So we're back to $500,000 on the motion then.
Okay, the motion is to $500,000 and the second agreed to it. So that's done. So we're back on the bill.
And we got to vote on it.
Okay, all those in favor of changing it from 1 million to $500,000, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no?
Now we got to vote on the amendment.
That was the amendment.
To move it, okay.
Okay, we need to vote on the bill, but to see if there's any more amendments.
We've got more. Page 15 is the program amount. So at the bottom of page 15, line 21, this is the amount for the entire program that we talked about. And I'm going to throw another number out. This is no different last time. Beat it up, run at it.
Mr. Co-Chair, I think 1521, that's the one we just changed to $500,000.
Okay.
Now, what's the new?
See, you're right. So let's go to the next one. The next one will be on page 17. This is what appropriates the money on page 17, line 15 and 16. Says there's reappropriated to the Wyoming Business Council X number of dollars, many funds out of the special session laws made available. So this is going to be the program amount. And I guess I'm going to throw out a first one, and it's $100 million. And I have no clue. I have no expertise, folks. That's a seat of the pants, fill in the blank. So let me know any thoughts you've got to change it.
Okay, I'm looking for a second on the $100 million. Okay, Anselmi Dalton is the second. Okay, discussion. Anselmi Dalton, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, 100 million, I think it's a good number. We might want to do more just because there's a lot of businesses that have suffered a pretty substantial loss. And, you know, if you're at 500,000, that's only 200 businesses. If they hit 500,000, and our business hit a pretty high number in those months, and we're smaller than some of these entities, the Dude Ranches, et cetera. So I might say 250 million. I don't know how much funding there is left from the CARES Act. I know Wyoming got more than their fair share, luckily, compared to other states. So I would maybe move that placeholder to 250 million. Thank you.
I'll
Is
second.
that an amendment?
Representative Dalton.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Was that an amendment to 250?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Second. Driscoll is the second. Further discussion, Senator James.
I just have a quick question. So is this for operational costs, or is this for more funding for more businesses and that and relief funds?
This is the sum of all the applicants for this particular thing. Okay, is that Mr. Co-Chair? Okay. Further questions on this amendment? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Just raise your hands, I guess, if you're in favor of this. Okay, amendment passes. So the number is 250 on page 17, line 1516. Okay, we're back on the bill. Further amendments. Representative Newsom.
That worked. Okay, on page 10, line 17, it refers to the Attorney General's obligation to determine the legality of this program. And I would like to add on line 17, after the word section, somehow by 30 days after the enactment of this bill.
We need a second for that amendment. Driscoll is a second. And that goes to page 10, line 17. Okay, Mr. Brody, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chairman, just wanted to raise the fact that on page 17, this same provision is included in the bill, and make sure that the intention is to amend both of these provisions or just one.
Representative Newsom, I assume it's to amend both provisions.
Yes, both. However, it makes it consistent throughout the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, yes, that make it conforming throughout the bill, if there's even more than two. Senator Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question for, I guess, Mr. Brody is, do we have to have the Attorney General review it, or can we just delete this section entirely? I think there's conflict sometimes in saying that if the legislature takes an action, that sometimes the Supreme Court will say that's fine because the legislature took the action. And so I just wonder, do we really have to get the Attorney General involved?
Mr. Brody.
Mr. Chairman, no, there's no legal requirement that the AG review this. I think it was more a belt and suspenders sort of approach, given the light guidance that came from the U.S. Department of Treasury.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Miller, thank you. Yeah, that was kind of my thoughts on it. The AG reviews every bill there is out there anyway. If the governor doesn't like it, the AG is going to tell him to veto the bill or do whatever. So I don't think that language is necessary. And if it is in there, I agree with the amendment that says, look, you've got 30 days to review it. If you haven't done a review at that time, but it just makes it tough because if they haven't done it, then the bill's dead anyway. So I'm happy either way. I think this debate's going to happen on the floor. And I'm pretty suspicious the AG, I'm getting a few texts here. I warned about that the AG is moving quicker than they have been. So.
My personal opinion on this particular part is that we need to remove the AG out of the language in the bill. Number one, another 30 days puts us closer to the end of the year. And we're not, that's the bottleneck we're running up against. So I'm going to vote for this, but if someone else is bringing an amendment to just remove that section, I'll vote for that too. Anyway, so we're on the bill. We have this amendment to require the 30 days. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, amendment passes. Further amendments, Anselmi Dalton?
Mr. Chairman, on page 10, I would strike on line 15 through 17, the Attorney General's review as per your discussion and make conforming changes. I just don't think we need to tie our hands to the Attorney General or the legislature. I'm looking for a second.
Moved by Dalton, second by Driscoll. Senator Manise, did you have a question or comment? Anyone else with question or comment? John, is it clear what we're doing here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Amendment passes. Okay, back on the bill. Further amendments. Or Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last one, and I noticed it when I went through. On page 9, lines 12 and 13, this is on the events end of it. And we ended up with a $150,000 cap there. We just heard from the Furball that they're above that. I happen to know Frontier Days is many multiples above it. So I would like to move on page 9, lines 12 and 13 to move the strike the 150,000 and move that amount to $3 million. And I think there's 1 or 2 events that possibly could qualify on that in the state. But it allows for those big events because we just heard testimony. Frontier Days is a $70 million, but $60 million event. Their losses, I believe, are going to be between $1.5 and $3 million. What I've talked to them, and it affects how their programs are going forward. They're expecting, for example, night shows are going to ask for deposits next year.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chair, what was the number you went to again?
I went to 3 million.
3 million. Okay, do we have a second?
Page 9, lines 12 and 13.
Changing from 150,000 to 3 million. And did we have a second?
Haven't yet.
Okay, Senator Manise is the second. Okay, discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
No discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Jamie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for Co-Chairman Driscoll. So just walk me through this as for instance. So if we're using CFD as an example, and if you look at the CARES Act requirements, 1, necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency with respect to the virus. Where in CFD would have been a necessary expenditure due to the virus? Just CFD as an example, Mr. Co-Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Flintner, you know, that language is the same problematic language we had in the programs that are in place right now. Because that's exactly the thing we had with businesses. They really, the guidance has been that you can't backfill revenues. And that's exactly what we've done with every program we've done, is we've gone and said, how much money did you lose? And what did it cost you to do that? And so what I'm merely doing is following what we've done in the other programs that are already out there, the business council programs that are there. This is fashioned in this bill using mirror language that we used in the bills we passed in special session. And the business council will determine eligibility on them via their rules. We gave them really broad authority. I hope that's not too vague for you. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion. Mr. Brody, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just, on that point, the Treasury guidance has talked about being able to provide funds for second order effects. So if you look at page 6 as part of the staff comment on this bill, that second paragraph on that in the staff comment provides a little bit of more explanation on what the Treasury believes these second order effects include.
Thank you. Okay, committee, further discussion on this amendment. Okay, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of increasing this amount. I'm maybe a question for Senator Driscoll is, are you going to also amend the total amount in the program for this one as well? Because again, 3 million and with the total program amount of 50 million isn't going to be a lot of events. So it's not going to, it may not be available for a lot of the smaller ones if you start giving it all away to just the big ones.
Hey, Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'm open. The number that we gave on it is the only one I had that I actually had guidance on. That was kind of the numbers that I was given by some people fairly well known, but I'm open to moving that number up to either 75 or 100 if someone would like to do it. I'm a little squishy on all these because I happen to know when we get to the floor in special session.
It's all going to change.
These sections are all going to change anyway. So I'm happy with whatever placeholder makes it that this bill gets out of this committee. That's, I'm gonna be honest, that's my only goal is to get this bill out of committee, and then we'll battle. So I'm open, Representative Yen, if you'd like to change it. And I'm happy to go along with whatever the number is.
Okay, committee, we're back on the bill. Representative Yen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just maybe a suggestion as a friendly amendment. If it's not friendly, then I won't make a motion. But if changing it to 1 million instead of 3 million.
Mr. Co-Chair, what do you think of 1 million versus 3 million?
I'd compromise it too.
Okay, Representative Yen.
Sure, I have no objection.
Okay, so we have an amendment to the amendment to change it from 3 million to 2 million. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand. Okay, it looks almost unanimous. Okay, so we're at 2 million now on the amendment to the draft bill. Further discussion? Senator Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 9, lines 22, 23, and through page 10, lines 1 through 6, I would strike it because there's lots of different, there's not just a payroll protection program.
We're still on this amendment for 2 million. Is that what you're?
Sorry, I apologize. My bad.
I think we just voted on it.
Yeah. We voted to change it to 2 million. John, did we vote on this amendment?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Mr. Chairman, technically, no.
Okay. Okay, so all those in favor of the 2 million amendment to page 9, lines 12 and 13, raise your hand. Okay, that passes. Now we're back on the bill. Senator Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move, I apologize for the other, on page 9, line 22 and 23, to strike that, and then on page 10, lines 1 through 6, to strike it. I know it's saying that they'll give preference, but there's lots of different funding that's been out there for different ways, not just the payroll protection loan. So I figured if Business Council could come up with their own rules, they'll know what's happening by the time they get to it. So I would just let them come up with it. They've done a great job, personally. I mean, I've worked with them on some of these grants, and I think they've been very responsive and pretty swift. So I would just strike to, oh, sorry, John, yes.
Okay, it moved by Dalton, Senator Dalton, second by the co-chair. John, go ahead.
Again, this is similar to the Attorney General language. That provision is also on page 16. So I just want to make sure that it should be removed from there as well.
Okay. Senator Dalton, I'm sure you want that to be conforming anywhere else in the bill.
Thank you. I'm sure my second does too.
Okay, very good. Okay, we're on page 9, lines 22 and 23, page 10, lines 1 through 6, to be struck from the bill. Representative Newsom. Mike.
I have a tiny screen and lots going on. My concern is that there are more business savvy and business savvy events and more business savvy members of the business community that have taken advantage of each and every program that has come along, whether it's PPP and the EIDL program federally, whether it's our programs that we've put up. And then there are other less savvy groups that have not been able to access those for lack of staff, for lack of information. And I would like to see there be a preference to those events and those businesses that have not received other funds. So not calling out PPP or any particular fund, but any federal fund or state fund related to COVID, that those businesses that have not received any of that funding be given preference to those businesses that have received any of that funding.
So you're opposing striking this language on this amendment?
I am.
Okay. Further discussion. Anselmi Dalton, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I understand what Representative Newsom is saying. It's true that there are more savvy people, and there are people probably that went in, as we saw, even Harvard got money under the payroll, protection loan, grant money. And so that is a concern, but I just still feel that we don't know what all kinds of funds that we'd have to amend the language. And I think the Business Council has been fairly quick on their feet, and I really think they've done a good job. And so I guess I would give them deference to just strike it and let them come up with their own rules. I mean, they did fine on the last one. If they want to exclude it and they want to ask what funds you've gotten, that's what they kind of did on their last grant application that I did. It didn't just have the payroll protection, it had other funds that they received. So I just didn't want to limit us. And so I just think maybe striking and trying to come up with a better balance would be the way to go. But I understand where Representative Newsom is coming from too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, we're going to vote on that amendment to strike the language lines 22, 23 on page 9 and lines 1 through 6 on page 10. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That amendment passes. We're back on the proposed bill. Representative Task.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know where this would fit in the bill, but I would like to move an amendment that in the case the federal government declares a clawback on these funds, that the state would roll this over to long-term low-interest loans. And I don't know the wording to obtain that
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Tass, second by Driscoll and Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Tass, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not going to bring the other amendment that allows business to go in. I think it was evident looking at the committee that that's not popular anyway. So the part Senator Manise and I talked about, they claw it back. It's on the state the way it stands. Someone wants to bring that during general, but I'm not going to open that can of worms today. So your deal's not necessary unless you just, if you put it there, it doesn't matter because the state's on the line. The way the bill reads right now, unless I did an amendment, which I don't intend to, the state's on the hook, not the business.
So you didn't second.
I seconded it and I'll let it fail or he can withdraw it.
Okay.
But if he wants to run, I'll talk against it even though I seconded it because it's not necessary now.
Representative Tass, what would you like to do? We have an amendment, proposed amendment and a second. Do you wish to withdraw it?
Well, I guess I don't understand the direction that the senator is trying to take here. We had this discussion that if there's a fallback that comes, the state doesn't want to be responsible for it. It will break the small businesses. That's what the object is trying to save today. And if we go ahead and have some framework for a loan payback, much like SBA has done, I would think this would be a benefit for the program. Otherwise, people are sure going to be scared of taking these loans that set out now, and you're actually going to end up having to pay it back. I don't know.
That's
want to be shot today or tomorrow.
That's not in the bill right now. Right now, it's just the state. There's no clawback.
I understand that, but if it's possible that the feds are going to do it,
The state's
chance that the feds will require.
the state's responsible.
Which is, I feel we need some protection that if there is, then we could roll it over into a loan program.
Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second. Further discussion. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd urge the committee to vote no. It really just adds a layer there that addresses nothing. And if I'd brought the other amendment I talked about, this is appropriate. Without it, it's going to confuse the bill, even the people that know it. So I urge a no vote on it.
Okay, Mr. Brody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I just want to bring up the point that if the bill is going to create a loan program, that is a larger, obviously, policy decision and would likely require a general fund appropriation in order to back up the loans that would be provided to the businesses, which isn't part of the current amendment. So I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention.
Mr. Brody, can we address that if this amendment passes?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely.
Okay, so we're back on the amendment. Representative Task?
If that's the case, it's going to be weighty, but I would withdraw my amendment.
Okay, second?
I'll withdraw it.
Okay, amendment's been withdrawn. We're back on the bill. Any further amendments? I'm seeing none. John, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I missed it, but I don't believe the committee has formally voted on increasing the appropriation for the events program, given that the cap on the stipend award was increased. So it's currently still 50 million, I believe.
Okay, we'll see if someone has an amendment for that. Mr. Co-Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have the page right now, but I think we all know it. it was to move it from 150,000 to $2 million. Okay,
I think we did that one.
well, which one are we on then?
It's the one that's at 50 million right
Oh,
now.
it's for the total amount on it.
Correct, I believe.
I think Representative Yenning, thumbs up or thumbs down. We moved, or somebody did, we were gonna move that to 100 million, correct? Okay, 100 million.
Hey, John, do you have a page number and line for that?
Mr. Chairman.
Page 11, line 3.
Okay. Page 11, line 3, changing from 50 million to 100 million?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a motion by the co-chair, second by Yin. Okay, discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, it passes. So we're back on the bill. Any further amendments? Some hands are really delayed going back down here. Okay, they finally went back down. Okay, question being called. John, I think we need a roll call on this one.
Mr. Chairman, you are correct, and the committee's rules on majority of each house will apply to this vote.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Mary Beth, will you call the roll, please?
And Mr. Chairman, I'll actually call the roll. I've got the sheet here in front of me.
Okay.
This is on whether the committee will sponsor 21 LSO 36 as amended. Senator Anselmi Dalton.
Aye.
Senator James.
No.
Senator Moniz.
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger.
He's an aye.
I'm sorry. Chairman Driscoll, I didn't hear what was said. Chairman Miller.
Yes, I have a text from Senator Wasserberger says I vote aye on the bill.
Senator Wasserberger, aye. Representative Edwards.
Aye.
Representative Flitner.
Aye.
Representative Freeman.
Aye.
Representative Haley.
Aye.
Representative Newsom.
Aye.
Representative Tass.
Aye.
Representative Winter.
Aye.
Representative Yin.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Driscoll.
Aye.
Co-Chairman Miller.
Aye.
The bill has been adopted, 4 on the Senate, 9 on the House.
Okay, thank you, John and committee. We're back to the agenda now, and the next agenda item is lunch. So this adjourn until 1:15. Public comment, what we have the Wild Lotto. Is Mr. Moore still here? Who's going to come?
Lotto's not more.
Who's going to
John
come?
Fonts, I don't know. LSO will have to tell us.
Okay, and
Although
then we
do
have the
that.
civil immunity bills this afternoon. So this adjourn until 1:15.